Ladies and gentlemen, Hebrews and Shebrews, welcome to the Life Podcast, where we inspire you to thrive as peculiar people in a modern world. And today we're doing that by talking to Tara Parks. She has an amazing and encouraging and wide-ranging testimony, but a lot of it circles around the medical industry. And she happened to become an herbalist. And so, well, it's definitely connected. Her bad experiences in medicine led her to herbalism. And so we're going to talk to her about how she came into Torah, how she became an herbalist, her bad experiences in the medical industry. And so then I just have to give the disclaimer, neither of us are doctors. Go seek your health care practitioner advice, blah, blah, blah. We can't technically give you medical advice. I'm not a doctor. I don't play one on the internet, and I got to do that to protect us both. This episode of the Life Podcast is sponsored by WholeBibleCommunity.com, a social network for Torah observers. It's for fellowships, it's for individuals, it's for businesses. The idea is to connect them all, give them a place to communicate on the platform. There's a messaging app. There is soon a video communication app. And one of the new features that has been added is a feast day finder. So you can go on there and find public feast days that are being celebrated, Passover, Sukkot, unleavened bread, all these things, where a fellowship or people are hosting something and they're inviting everyone to come. It is made to connect you and also protect you. That's why you don't have to share all your personal details on there. And some new features that Matthew has added, because he heard some of your feedback, is that you can now sign up and you can, instead of just putting in your address or having your location data being turned on, you can just choose a place on the map, anywhere of where you want to put yourself, so that you can be protected and your location can be protected. And then if you're a fellowship, you can, of course, put it right on your third-party location where you meet so that people can, find it. But for individuals, you can put the pin wherever you want, get past that step, sign up, and find people who are doing the same thing you're doing. Soon there will be this business marketplace where you can find businesses to work with. So the team is constantly working away and they're really improving this. Go to WholeBibleCommunity.com and sign up. Add me as a friend. Without further ado, I give you Tara. Tara, welcome. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Welcome to the Life Podcast. How are you doing?
Doing great. Doing great. Thanks for having me.
You shocked me with that beautiful mug.
Woo.
All right. Well, really nice mug there. Thank you so much for joining me today. I think everyone is going to really be excited to hear your story and pick your brain with me. So I guess we better get right into it. Can you tell us a little about your testimony? Like, how did you even know there was a creator? How did you eventually get saved and come into the Torah too?
Well, I think my journey into life started a bit unconventional. I was born into a very, very young family. I like to say so young, my grandparents were in their 30s. So my grandma was 33 when I was born. My grandfather was 36. My grandma had my mom when she was 15. My mom got pregnant at 16, had me at 17. So my grandma had 4 kids when I was born. My mom was the oldest of the 4. The youngest 2 were like 11 at the same time because they were like Irish twins or something. Anyway, so the family that I was born into was unconventional. Not exactly what someone would call stable. A lot of stuff going on, and my mom wasn't actually in a relationship with my biological father, so he was absent from my life. Matter of fact, in my baby book, there's a couple names crossed out. So like my mom wanted me to have a father, but it wasn't present for me. So I grew up pretty much with a single mom for my toddler years and all that. And my mom would describe those years as traumatic for her. I had a traumatic birth, and I think that played into my issues as a toddler, but my mom just didn't understand that. Later on in life, I had a chiropractor tell me that the things my mom would describe me doing were probably me just trying to self-adjust. because of the trauma that I endured at birth, I was delivered with forceps, and because of the forcefulness of it, they dislocated my shoulder. I had shoulder dystocia as a baby. So then my mom would describe me as a toddler sitting between the toilet and the wall, hitting my head between the two. And it's like, well, that sounds crazy, right? Like to see your little toddler doing these things, but to a medical professional, it's like, well, there was something wrong with that baby. Like there's something she's trying to communicate or something wrong. My mom just thought I was crazy. My mom just thought I was a terror. I mean, that's how people described me when I was young. I was a terror. I was out of control. And so by the time I was 4, I was in therapy. My preschool was called Child Guidance. It was a therapy center. And then my mom ended up getting married when I was 4, and that man adopted me. And so I started to have more of a quote unquote normal, stable life. I went to a Catholic school for for kindergarten when I was 5. And then I started in a new school when they bought a new house, and it was just an urban public school. And I remember walking to school. I remember enjoying school. Um, I went to Girl Scouts. I danced at the local dance center. I played with friends, rode my bike, played video games at the neighbors next door. We had birthday parties. I mean, it just seemed like a normal life. Um, and then in 3rd grade, I started to get in trouble, and the school and my parents got together and they just decided, well, she's bored. So let's skip her a grade. That was the school's suggestion. And instead of skipping a grade, my parents chose to have me go to a math and science academy. So I did that. Then they moved, and somewhere along the line, their marriage started to fail. And that's when things really started to change for me because my mom was no longer in a stable relationship. And that man who adopted me, one thing led to another, and he chose to abandon me at that point in my life as well. No longer take me with my brother. And I was like 10, 11 years old. And so while I'm at this impressionable point of life, my mom is now single, trying to pick her life back up. And a big part of her life was trying to find love. She was seeking love. And like when I was 10, she was like 27. So single, this young woman with these kids, and now newly divorced. And so where my mom sought love was not church. It wasn't the the safe, good places. It was the bars, and she liked, the hardcore kind of guys and stuff. So that was the influence. That was the people around me. And I remember being like hypersexualized at a very young age, being introduced to like really strong sexual themes. I don't remember ever being taken advantage of or anything like that. These were normally like kids introducing me to these things. Um, if you listen back now to like New Kids on the Block, very sexualized. Like I'm 7, thinking like, you got the right stuff, baby. Love the way you turn me on. Like I'm singing these things at this young age and nobody's paying any attention. They're kind of celebrating that I like these things. And then, um, 10 years old, when my mom would get a babysitter, my favorite movie was Boys in the Hood. That's a really rough movie, but yet it was okay to rent for me to watch with the babysitter at 10 years old. So I just had these adult themes and these very mature things in my life at a young age. And as I started to grow up, I looked older. I looked more mature for my age. And so that led to me having older friends, essentially. Um, there was a period of time where my mom sold our house, and then she moved me in with her friend, and then we started to have like really intense. My mom and I just started not getting along, and so she sent me to live with my grandparents. More stability in my life. My grandparents. This was a new grandpa. They got married when I was 6, but not the grandpa that I was born with. She remarried later, but they had a very stable life. They were Christians. They went to church very regularly. And when I lived with them, I did the things that they did. So I went to church with them. And when I got older and lived with them the second time, I actually joined their youth group. which I'll get to. But that's where I think the impression about God came from. Like my mom would take us to church for Christmas and Easter to be with my grandparents. And I did go to vacation Bible school at the church down the street a couple of times as a kid. But I think my real influence started to come in a time where I really needed some healthy influence, and they were the only healthy influence I had as far as a belief system or the Bible or anything relating to God. And so the first time I lived with my grandparents was in seventh grade. I went to three different schools in seventh grade. So I went to the school my mom had me go to starting seventh grade. And then when she sold the house and moved in with her friend, I was still in seventh grade. I went to that school for a very short time. And then when she had me go live with my grandparents, I was still in seventh grade. And so I had to start a new school to finish out seventh grade with them. So these are very like quick things in very short periods of time. But then in the summer of seventh grade, my mom moved out of her friend's house into an apartment, wanted me back with her. So then I went from stability back to instability. I started eighth grade at a new school. My mom was a single mom with me and my brother. She worked two jobs. She worked a normal like manufacturing job, and then she worked at a bar and waited tables. And so pretty much my brother had his dad and would go with his dad, and I had me when she was gone. And I had the friends I was making. And so I had a lot of time to myself. And because I was attracting these older people and I already had older themes in my life, I already acted older, I just started doing the things that they were doing. And I did have good things happening. Like even in sixth grade, like I was named problem solver of the year in math class. And I joined the seventh grade girls basketball team. And in eighth grade, I was named a conflict manager for my peers. Like they trained me to be a conflict manager. In ninth grade, I joined in, I was accepted to the cheerleading squad at the high school that I had started at. So these like good things were happening, but I was starting to develop really bad habits. The music I listened to, the people I hung around with, they were a lot older than me, mostly like 1 to 2 years. But at that age, that can be the difference of being able to drive and not being able to drive. That's like a freedom difference. And so my mom ended up moving out of the apartment into a duplex on a street that was just full of rentals. And so that's not a bad thing, but it was a lot of turnover. And so there was a lot of single moms, a lot of absent fatherhood, a lot of teenage girls that were like me. I didn't have a father figure, and my mom was busy trying to take care of us and, live her life. And so that's who I was attracted to, were those same girls. Um, it eventually led to me running away from home at 14. And this was a pivotal time in my life because when I was gone for 10 days on like in Grand Rapids. So like the city of Grand Rapids, I was just gone. Nobody knew where I was. I was just kind of house hopping, couch hopping. And I ended up getting jumped by a gang. Um, I, I had did something wrong, and um, to them, they had a valid reason to jump me. And so it was this big group of guys and girls. And I remember at that time, like they were literally kicking me in all the places that all I could think about was, God, please don't make it so I can't have kids someday. Like, don't let them hurt me so bad I can't be a mom. And I know she had to have been in place because of him, because I remember them getting ready to light my hair on fire, and the lawn that I ended up on when they attacked me, somehow all the commotion woke up the woman that lived there, and she came out right about as they were about to light my hair on fire. This seems really drastic, but I mean I can remember it clear as day. And that woman took me in, she took me to the hospital, got me medical care, and then took me to a safe place. And that was probably the first time I ever, like, was in a moment of desperation and was like, "God, save me. I need you." And he did. He really did. That was a traumatic thing to go through, but he did.
Today's episode is sponsored by Goshen Tax and Consulting LLC.com. If you are like me, you have not done your taxes yet. Don't be in fear. Don't let the worry of the impending April 15th deadline grip you around the throat and make you cry. Just go to Goshen Tax and Consulting LLC.com, put in code The Life, and get 10% off your taxes. Give it to Kyle Smith, the Torah observant accountant, who will take care of all of your problems, all of your money problems at least. And as soon as you finish that, go to the other part of their site where they do marketing and website design and let them help your business explode. So you can, one, get your finances in order by going to Kyle Smith at Goshen Tax and Consulting LLC.com. And two, you can take care of the marketing and website design like Shepherd's Crook Coffee did and improve your site, improve the response that people give you when they go there. And you can do all these things, kill both of these birds with one Torah observant stone. Go to Goshen Tax and Consulting LLC.com and put in code THELIFE10 to get 10% off their awesome services.
I ended up being reunited with my mom, and I didn't want to go with her. I just didn't. I didn't like my mom. I didn't trust her. She made my life very chaotic. She blamed me for everything. And she always brought up my childhood and how I've always just been a terror and trouble for her. And so she just wasn't a very nice person to be around at that age, you know? I just didn't want to go home. I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to deal with her. And so I told the police, like, take me to Pine Rest. Pine Rest is a mental hospital. And I was like, I'd rather go to Pine Rest than go home with her. And they were like, what do you think about that? My mom was like, well, if she wants to go, take her. So they took me to Pine Rest, and I was, instituted at this mental hospital. And what I realized was, being in like the small group with these other kids that were in there, I didn't have their problem. Like, I didn't hate myself. There were people there that hated themselves to the point of self-mutilation, and like people who came from really, really disparity, like really awful home situations that made my home situation seem not quite so bad. Like, I had issues with my mom. Like, it, I didn't have the same issues that they had. And it started to almost produce like a bit of gratitude in me and a bit of realization, like, I don't have it that bad, you know? And so I didn't stay at the mental hospital very long. They didn't medicate me. I wasn't a problem. I just didn't want to go home. I was a runaway. And so I think I stayed there for like 2 weeks, and then I was reunited with my mom. Well, my mom got scared that the gang that jumped me was going to come after her and affect me and her and my little brother. So she again asked my grandparents to take me in. And so when I was 14, 15-ish, I went and lived with my grandparents again. And they had moved and started at a new church, and this church had a youth group. And so they got me involved in their youth group. I was going to church with them regularly. I had started a new school for 10th grade. Got my driver's license, made the cheerleading squad again, attracting new and older friends, but still having some good things going on in my life too. And then we ended up going on a missions trip when I lived with my grandparents with that youth group down to Mexico. And so we traveled down through Texas, stayed in McAllen just across the border, and we went into Reynosa, Mexico for this missions trip. And again, seeing these other living situations, these people who are less fortunate than me, made me really realize that I didn't have it so bad. Yes, I went through a lot of things and life was hard, but it wasn't that hard. And I did have people that loved me, and I did have good things going for me. And it was on that mission trip that I remember going in a room all by myself and just praying, God, I know I'm the reason my life is so hard. Help me make better choices. I know you can. I want to know you're real. Help me. I need you, and just recognizing that I just never, like I said, I never blamed him. I never was like, God, why are you doing these things to me? Or why are these people so bad to me? It was like I had a part to play in those things. I could have made better decisions. I could have done better things and I wasn't. So realizing and recognizing that I was having a hard time doing that, that was my prayer. Help me. Help me make better choices. Help me make better decisions. And so we returned from that trip, and I was 16 at the time, and my mom moved from the apartment and she had bought a house. And so then again, I was in the position of mom wants you back. And I honestly think I had become um so quick with my rebelliousness that my grandpa was ready for me to move back home. Like, my grandparents were so loving, and they were the only people I trusted as authority in my life because they weren't trying to control me. They gave me a bit of autonomy. They let me be myself with them while also still providing me guidance. Where I felt like every other situation of authority in my life, they were just trying to control me. It was just a matter of getting, like, manipulation and just what can we do to get her to just listen and be under control, you know? And I was too sensitive to that. So I became rebellious naturally. But anyways, my mom had me back, and by this time, the house she lived in, I was back in an urban environment. So the high school that I had to go to in 11th grade, very urban. It was like the urban sprawl. So um pregnancy in the school was not common thing. A lot of gang behavior, a lot of you know, absent fathers, a lot of single mom households. Uh, but in there was, kids that were okay too. But that's what the school was predominantly made up of. And I started going there, but I really didn't like it, like, at all. I grew sick of being at school. And so somebody told me I was old enough to drop out of school and nobody would go to my mom for truancy. So I did. I dropped out of school and I said, Mom, I don't have to live with you anymore. Nobody's going to call the cops on me. They're not going to come get me. So I'm moving in with friends. See ya. And I moved in with these guys that I had made friends with. One of them owned his own house, and they were decent people, uh, but it was party house. I worked up the street as a hostess at the local restaurant. And I was reunited with a friend from my past, was a childhood friend of my mom's, and then a relative of hers. And she was like, "Hey, um, if you come and live with me and babysit my daughter, I'll let you live with me rent free." And so I was like, "Okay, cool." You know? So I moved in with her. Well, she was older than me. And when her daughter would go on the weekends to her dad's, she would take me to the bars with her. This is after I'm praying, God help me make better choices, right? So it wasn't an immediate thing. It wasn't overnight. And it wasn't like from darkness to light like that, or like how some people might imagine I just cleaned up my life amazingly all of a sudden. It didn't work that way. Um, and so this friend, that I was living with started taking me to bars with her, and I was meeting very older people. And I looked old enough to be a young girl at that bar. And I think some bouncers just turned the other cheek too. Like they knew I shouldn't be there, but they just let me in anyways. And I ended up meeting a guy. I was barely 17, who was 23. Smooth talker. Uh, Long story short, I became pregnant at 17. And it was 4 months after I turned 17, actually. And it was by this man who was 6 years older than me. So I realized by that time he wasn't good. I was just stuck. And all of a sudden I had this baby, and gosh, I was gonna have to clean my life up. Like, I was gonna have to, she was now gonna be affected by everything I did. It wasn't just me anymore. I was gonna hurt her by the things I was doing. So I went back home. I decided to move back home and I decided to go back to school. And the school said because I was out of school for a certain time, I had to go to an alternative school, it's like for a semester before they would let me come back to the regular school. More so to show I was serious about wanting to come back to school, I think was their point. But at the alternative school, they realized, like, the vice principal somewhere about what I mean, I just showed up to school. I wanted to go to school. I wanted to do better. I wanted to get an education. I'd realized I'd made mistakes and, I needed to be educated for my daughter or the baby at the time. And the vice principal must have saw that I was taking things seriously, or it was the hand of Yah. Like, I believe it was Yah positioning these people for me, because he pulled me into his office one day and he was like, "You don't belong here. You are too smart to be here." And, he said that privately. I don't think he was trying to insult anybody else, but I think he recognized I had an intelligence and I could do well in a regular school. And he said, "With the time that you were away from school, you're going to have to come back. You don't have enough credits to graduate starting now. You're going to have to come back to high school with a baby." He said, "Do you want to do that?" And I was like, "No." And he's like, "Well, I don't think you have to. I think you're smart enough to be able to take the GED." And he explained to me what the GED was. And he said, "You can't take it till you turn 18. But when you turn 18, I think this is something we should try to just get you moving on in life." And so the week I turned 18, I took all 5 tests in one afternoon and ended up passing, and I was graduated. So he then, after that happened, was like, "Okay, let's get you set up with the local college," and got me set up with the admissions director. And the admissions director called me in and had me meet with, like, a schedule planning person. "What do you want to do? Like, what excites you? What motivates you? Like, what are your dreams in life?" And so all of a sudden, these people were like wanting me to succeed and wanting me to do well and speaking life into me, recognizing that I wasn't just this broken, rebellious, lost cause, but there was actually hope that they saw in me and they were drawing it out of me, even while I was this young, single teenage mom, you know? And so I did. I went to college that fall and I started in criminal justice. I was going to college. I felt good and I had the nanny watching my daughter during the day. And then that little old lady, I just felt like she wasn't really being the nanny I wanted. So I had this little period of time where I didn't have anybody and my professor was like, "Bring her." And so my professor literally let me bring my daughter, set her up on a little blanket in front of my desk and, like, attend his class. So favor, like, more favor, um, for me as a single mom. Well, I ended up changing, my schedule and stuff to better suit my daycare options, and longer story short, um, by that end of the first semester, I was making enough money at my job where I was like, I can move out. Like, I don't have to live with my mom anymore. I can move out, and I found a apartment. Actually found a couple different apartments, and I really liked this other apartment, but I chose the one I did because it had the washer and dryer inside the apartment. That may seem like an insignificant detail, except for I happened to move into the apartment building with my daughter that now my husband of the last 25 years lived in. So I moved into apartment 1. He lived in apartment 12. And I moved in January of 2001. My daughter was 9 months old. And by that time, I had started going to church with her. I'd started going to the local church that I knew about. I started to regularly, and I got involved in the children's ministry. And my goal was to know God myself and to know him as my father so that I could teach my daughter about him and that he was her father. Because we were these two girls without fathers, and it was like I knew I knew God had a father's heart, and so I wanted to know him, and I wanted to be able to teach my daughter about his father heart. And so when I moved into the apartment, that's where I was in life. Was going to church regularly. I was trying. Um, to clean up my choices and be a better like influence on my daughter. And then February rolls around and I lock eyes with this guy upstairs. And I was like, "Hey," and he actually they said hey to me first. I was with my grandma walking in the apartment, and he was outside on his porch, and his friend was like, "How you doing?" to my grandma, and that started a little bit of exchange. But that's the first time I ever remember really seeing Will was that moment. And our groups of friends ended up going out, and he pulled me on the dance floor, and we have been together ever since. That sounds amazing, and it is, but there was a lot of work I had to do because I shortly realized he had no knowledge of the Bible. He had no knowledge of a God in heaven. And this is a funny thing we laugh about now, but I just could not believe he had no idea Jesus had anything to do with Christmas or Easter. I was like, "You have no idea that has anything to do with Jesus?" He didn't. He had no idea. Now he'll laugh about it and he's like, "Well, I was right all along. It didn't have anything to do with Jesus." But in my young Christian, I mean, that was what they all had to do with, right? The resurrection and his birth. And so I was just like, man, here I am trying to start this life as a Christian woman, raising my daughter up in Christianity. And I meet this guy and he's not a Christian. And at that time, I had enough sense to know the Bible said, do not be unequally yoked. I mean, that was just a biblical principle. And so it was not like this romance. It was not like this dating period for us. It was, so I got to let you know I'm a Christian and I don't want to date you. I want to marry you if this is going to work between us. And I can't let you be around my daughter if you don't want to marry me. But I also can't marry you if you're not a Christian. So I kind of need you to figure this out. Like she's getting older and I don't want to just date you and then it not work out. So can you like start trying now? And uh, I kind of had this juvenile idea. I mean, it does say that in the Bible, but like faith comes by hearing and hearing by the word of God, right? It's you got to hear the word spoken. You got to be immersed in the word to start developing that faith and that knowledge of him. And so I asked him to go to church with me and he did not like it. He didn't like the music and he just was like, "I don't want to go there." And I was like, "Well, can you at least like get up and clean Sunday morning then? Don't just like sleep in while we're going to church." And but that didn't take long. He ended up getting over himself and then continuing to go to church with me. And within 7 months, he had gone forward and accepted Jesus as a savior and was baptized. So we started dating in March and he was baptized in October. I very much spoke against him doing it for me. I said, "If you do this for me, it's not going to last and we're not going to work. So take the time that you need." But it was really important to me. Like we couldn't advance our relationship if he didn't figure this out. And I was really cautious about having him around my daughter because I didn't want her to know him and then he leaves. That's what I grew up with. Just men coming in and out of my life. And I didn't want to start her life that way. And so he did. Praise Yah that he did. He found a faith and um, he accepted Jesus as Lord of his life and as evidence of that, he chose to be baptized. And he's a stubborn man. So I know now there was no way he would have done any of that for me. Like he would have went along peaceably and quietly, but he wouldn't have actually said he believed in Jesus or been baptized if he didn't actually believe that. Um, and I believed him at the time, but I know that for a fact now. So anyways, I had this Christian man now that I could marry and it was all good and legal to do in my mind. And he proposed the next February. So this is 2002. And by that time, he lived with me. I knew it wasn't right, but he was evicted. Him and his buddies were evicted from their apartment. And so all his buddies went back to their hometown, which was 45 minutes away from us. And I just lived downstairs. And we had started this relationship. And my daughter was used to seeing him around. And so I did wholeheartedly try to help him find a single, like a one bedroom or a studio apartment, but he couldn't afford anything. And I guess I just was like, I know this isn't the right thing to do, but we're getting married. And I mean, I really did have a conviction about it, but I compromised my conviction and I let him move in with me for practicality's sake. Like we were headed that direction. Well, when he proposed, I got excited and I wanted to secure our pastor at church because I wanted to make sure nobody else got my date. And so I filled out the application for church right away and they called us in like a week later. And I thought they were just going to discuss the wedding with us. And they were like, so we notice here you guys have the same address. And I was like, oh man, like I knew better. And they were like, here's the deal. We're not going to support you getting married a year from now while cohabitating unmarried. So you have two options. And I felt like this was literally Jesus standing before me saying, I present you life or death. Choose life. Like that was just, I just knew I was this full on conviction. And they were like, so you either find a different pastor to marry you, or you move your wedding up and we will be happy to be part of your marriage, your wedding. And I knew what we had to do. I was like, well, forget about it. Forget about my childhood dreams. Forget about everything I had wanted. Th- they're right. We need to get married because we're not living right. And so he agreed. And so we were originally going to get married June 1st or May 31st of 2003. And we moved our wedding up to May 31st of 2002, which was February, March, April, May, like 3 months after he proposed. So naturally, our families thought I was pregnant because why would they do this? They all thought they had a year to plan, and his family lived in Florida, so they thought they had a year to get their travel plans together. And we thought we had all this time to find a dress and all this, and all of a sudden it was like, nope, it's go time, you know. And so we got married May 30 or June 1st of 2002. That started our journey together. As this young Christian couple, um, we got pregnant right away. We had a honeymoon baby. So we went from having a baby that he inherited, that I already had, to becoming parents of two very quickly. Um, he was allowed to adopt my daughter by the time she turned 3 because we were married when she was 2, and the state of Michigan required you to be married for a year before they would allow the adoption to take place. So he was involved in her life from 10 months, but he was allowed to adopt her by the time she was 3. And so we had that happen. And then, yeah, we just kept going to church, and we were both involved in the ministry, the children's ministry together. We became teachers in the nursery, and we were joining small groups, and our life was really, we were blessed with fertility. I couldn't stop getting pregnant. Um, literally, I didn't know like a lot of things I know now because it was just happening, and I wasn't raised to be conscious of a lot of things. Um, and so we had our honeymoon baby, and then I found myself pregnant again. They would have been 20 months apart, but I miscarried that baby. So our second baby was born April of 2023 and miscarried our third baby in June of 2024. Then I had our third born baby in October of 2005. Then I had our fourth born baby in March of 2007. And that baby rocked our world because she was born with spina bifida. So I was 24 years old and she was diagnosed when she was 20 weeks gestation in my womb with this life altering birth defect. I should back up a little bit because my third daughter is what started me in herbalism. So she was born, she wasn't premature, but she was born jaundice. And so I don't know if I do believe that it was the liver stress that led her immune system to be compromised, and she kept getting ear infections. And the pediatrician, she was just a small baby, like 2 months old. And the pediatrician gave me a round of amoxicillin. I gave it to her, didn't clean up her ear infection. She was still as miserable as all get out. And then gave me another round of a different antibiotic and said, okay, let's try this one. Did not do anything, still was just miserable. I had this miserable baby. And a friend of mine at the time had just started getting into more crunchy living, raw milk and home birthing and herbs and all that. And she said, hey, why don't you try this? And she gave me a bottle of mullein and garlic ear oil. And I tried it. 24 hours, my daughter was acting different. 48 hours, we had a follow up with the pediatrician, and her ear was fine. No sign of infection. Of course, they thought it was the second round of antibiotics, but I knew the difference that in her just from starting to use the mullein and garlic ear oil. So I was like, wow, what is this world that you just introduced me to? So that was my introduction. And then not long after that, they're only 17 months apart. I had this fourth baby, and she was born with this life altering birth defect. And that was a journey in itself because I was funneled from like a certified nurse's midwife that was a little more uh, relaxed about birth and a little bit more traditional about birth to all of a sudden my baby had a problem, so I had to go to a maternal fetal medicine doctor. And all of a sudden I had to do ultrasounds all the time, and they had to monitor her all the time. Well, my very first appointment with the maternal fetal medicine clinic, here I was 5 months pregnant, a very viable baby, right? And I was reading this magazine while waiting in the waiting room, and I know this was, yeah, I know it was because these are not coincidences. I was reading this magazine and there was like a Dear Abby column, and this mom had written in, and she said, I I was pregnant with a baby that had been diagnosed with myelomeningocele. We chose to terminate the pregnancy. What can we do in the future to prevent this from happening again for our future children? Well, here I am sitting there with the same diagnosis for my baby as they did. They chose to terminate their pregnancy. And I just couldn't fathom that reading that article. So then I get pulled into my appointment, and I didn't meet with the doctor first. I met with a genetic counselor. Then I understood why. The very first option they gave us was abortion. They said, you are 22 weeks. You're in the window of termination, medical termination. And they tried to turn it around on like your baby is not going to have a viable life. She's going to her quality of life is going to be so poor that you should consider terminating the pregnancy. It's for her best. Like it's for the best for her. And I'm just sitting there in my mind going, are you out of your mind? Like you're telling me to abort my baby? Like what is wrong with you? Like literally like that's what was going on internally. And I had become so offended that because after I made it clear that is not an option, and it wasn't like, no, I don't think we're going to do that. It was like, are you kidding? Like, no, that's not an option. Then they offered me to go to Philadelphia where they were doing this trial where they were going in and surgically repairing the back of these babies. But I had lost so much trust because they had offered me an abortion. I couldn't even think about that sensibly. Like them opening me up and then having access to her when you just offered to kill her? Like how could you appreciate her life enough that you want to fix her right after telling me she's not going to have a good enough life to have? Like it was just too much, and I couldn't reconcile the two paradigms. And so I declined it. I was like, "No, you're not like no. How could I trust you like this? No." Like I had no trust. And so I continued to go to the maternal fetal medicine doctor, but I went back to the certified nurses midwives, and I said, I'll let the maternal fetal medicine doctors take care of my baby, but will you please take care of me? Because I don't think I'm going to do well with how cold they are about my baby and her life and her right to life, and they just kept referring to her as this baby and babies like this. And like they had told me I had to have a C-section. And I was like, well, why? Does it improve her life? And they're like, no, it makes it so everybody else is, where they need to be on time. Like if we know you're going to have the baby this time, then the anesthesiologist and all the other doctors can be where they need to be. I was like, so you want me to be cut open for your convenience? No, thank you. That's how my brain was thinking. Like, no. And so this was my experience having a baby diagnosed with a birth defect. It was literally like I was having to protect her and keep her safe, like against this cold hearted society of doctors that claim to be the ones to take care of her. And so the certified nurse's midwife was a really wise choice on my part to go back to her. And I was favored that she would even take care of me because she helped me maintain my emotional stability to be able to remain strong and healthy through the remainder of my pregnancy. The problem ended up being I did end up having a C-section with her. And knowing what I know now, I know I didn't have to, but I ended up going in at 37 weeks. They checked me, I was dilated to 4, and they were like, "Well, you can stay or you could go." By that time, I was so ready to just have her be born and move on with life that I was like, "Well, if labor's starting, like, let's get this show on the road." Well, as induction happens, she wasn't ready to be born. So they had to do all the induction things. And by the time they broke my water, she still wasn't ready to be born. So they tried to make me believe that her head was too large because of the spina bifida and the hydrocephalus that had developed. She was just too large to descend. And they really were like, it's time you're gonna have to have a C-section. And so I did, and she was born. Well, the neurologist that we were seeing before she was born tried to prepare us for her to have, like, in and out of hospital the first year, just in and out, in and out, and in and out. She wouldn't walk. They told us she wouldn't walk. She might be able to take steps, but she wouldn't be ambulate enough to be able to use it as her primary means of walking. And I took it to prayer. I went home. I just wrote out this prayer. I made these confessions. She will walk. I wrote down Jeremiah 29:11. You have a plan. You have a purpose for her. I know you are with her. I know you want her to be healed and whole. I know you have plans for her. And I just had this confidence. So because I had a C-section, um, I ended up staying the full 4 days. But then I just went and sat by her bed thinking, this is my baby. I have a right to be by my baby. I didn't know at the time that that wasn't what parents did, but I just did it and they let me do it. She ended up only being in the NICU for 8 days, and they thought that was miraculous. She had her surgery at 15 hours old. Her back was repaired and they put a shunt in her brain. And then I just continued to breastfeed her and nurse her and be by her side and nurture her, let her be skin to skin. And I never left her side. I actually tried to go to church and I was an emotional basket case. And so I went back and I was like, I just have to be by my baby. And I don't know if that may be why she fared so well as opposed to some of these other babies who are not with their parents as much. But whatever the reason, she was discharged at 8 days. And studying like the numerology of like his numbers and his meaning behind numbers, 8 is a number for new beginnings. And I really felt like that was the that was him showing he was with us and this was his timing and this was time for her to go home. And so she went home with us and we did not have any problems. Her shunt was fine. We weren't in and out of the hospital over that course of a year. She was delayed developmentally. Um, but we had somebody coming into our house, doing things with her, and just all these things that they had prepared us for weren't happening. And so by the time she was 18 months old, I felt like I was in a position where I could stand up for these babies and these moms who just went through an experience that I did. I was starting to remember my experience and how they told me she wasn't going to have quality enough of life to even have a life. And yet she's this bubbly, happy, joyful little baby who is learning to sit up and crawl and maybe not according to other babies' developmental plans, but she's doing it. Like, I didn't understand it. And so I wrote into Right to Life of Michigan and I shared my story. And they ended up asking me to be a speaker for them. And so, yeah, gave me a platform to use that situation with her to speak into other people's lives. And I know of at least two situations that it really impacted. So I know it went beyond me. Praise him. So that's one journey and story I had. Well, because of my introduction to herbalism and the standard of care with spina bifida, I started questioning doctors really early on with my little spina bifida baby. They wanted to put her on a prophylactic antibiotic at 6 weeks old. And I was like, why? Well, in case she gets an infection. I was like, well, how about we treat the infection when she gets it? Like, I'm not going to destroy her microbiome at 6 weeks old because she might get an infection. That might seem bad, but I mean, we'll treat the infection if she gets one, was the more practical thing in my mind. And I actually decided I wanted to go back to school. Um, I had graduated from college already with a degree in, ended up changing my degree from criminal justice to business management and got an art degree in the arts. And I want to go back to school for nursing because all of a sudden I had this little baby and I didn't understand the Latin and I didn't understand all these medical terms. And I was nervous that they would do harm to her because of my ignorance. And so I wanted to know that medical terminology and I wanted to understand what they were saying. I didn't want it to be foreign to me. So I went back to school and I went back to school for our nursing program and I studied for 2 years in that program. And then I got pregnant again for our fifth daughter. Our fourth was born in 2007 and our fifth was born in 2009. Um, a little side note in between there. Will wanted to have a vasectomy in between after Elena was born, after our fourth was born. And I had a burning desire for a son by that time. I had all these little girls and I was grateful. I loved being a girl mom, but I wanted a little boy so bad. And I was only 24 when she was born. And I was like, I know we have a lot of kids, but I'm young and like, I want a boy, you know? And so he canceled like two vasectomy appointments and was like, one more time. We'll try for a boy one more time. And this lady at church gave us a book called How to Choose the Sex of Your Baby. I knew better. I knew we really couldn't, but there were some scientific things that they suggested you do to help increase your odds of having a little boy. We did those things to the T, and we had a sweet little girl. So God is in control. Anyways, Will had his vasectomy before she was born. So he made sure he had it done before I could change his mind again. And so I had that baby. I was in nursing school. And then they called me for my clinicals to start the actual nursing program. And when they did that, they had a list. They had pulled up my immunization record and they had a list of 11 different immunizations I had to have to get caught up, including tetanus. And I was like, yeah, what if I don't want to do that? Because I knew better by that time. And she was like, well, we can't force you to do it, but you have to have these vaccinations to be in these clinical settings. And if you're not in those clinical settings, you don't qualify to graduate. And so I was like, well, let me go home and think about it. And I prayed about it. And, yeah, just helped me see if I started that program now with this brand new baby for 18 months of her life, I was going to be mostly absent because it was a rigorous program. And I was just like, I don't want to do that. I don't do that. And I'm not going to be vaccinated. And so I was like, well, there's no other option. Then I have to resign. So I resigned from that program. But before I resigned, I was able to take one one pharmacology class. And I literally went from anatomy and physiology, sitting in anatomy and physiology and thinking, how can anybody take this class and not believe in God? Because yes, the physiology is all theory, but the anatomy itself, what can be proven, is a miracle in itself. Like everything was so intentional. Just the placement of everything and how it all works together. And so that was like that was an important part in my brain to see. And then you go from that to pharmacology, and all of a sudden they're just shoving pharmaceuticals down your throat. And the professor walked in talking about how, the design for pharmaceuticals is to do one thing, but no pharmaceutical does one thing. And so she went down. I don't know if you've ever seen the metformin t-shirt where metformin will be the drug on the bottom. And then there's another drug listed and another drug listed and another drug listed. And there's like 12 up. And it's all because you started taking metformin. It's like the cascade of events that happen from the side effects. So you start taking another drug to help with those side effects. And before long, you're on 12 medications, all because you started taking metformin. Like that. So she went down that cascade of events and how pharmaceuticals do that. And I'm just sitting there like, and this is okay? Like we've adopted this as normal? Like I don't quite understand. Um, but by that time as well, like I had now a baby that I was gonna have a VBAC with. And so I had like met the obstetricians that were like, no, you can't have a VBAC. And I'm like, yes, I can. I had babies naturally until I had a C-section for my daughter. I know I can have another baby naturally. This was this was another, I believe, critical moment because the doctors were starting to manipulate me that my baby's head was too large and it was too dangerous to try to have her naturally and that it was going to increase uterine rupture. At 36 weeks, OB had me do an ultrasound. And I was like, this is weird. Why would she do that? And after the ultrasound, I was like, so did everything look okay? And she was like, yeah, your baby just has a big head. And I just thought this was so strange. And so I went on the natural parenting forum I was on. I was like, something really strange happened today. And they all chimed back, she's trying to get you to do a C-section because she's trying to get you to believe that your baby's head is too big and you're more chance of a uterine rupture. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're right. And so at that time, I started planning a home birth. I was like, forget you. Like, I'm not going to let you manipulate me. And I'm not going to be forced into this situation where I'm at vulnerable to you during this really vulnerable place in my life. Like, forget you. Like, it was that safety thing. Like, I felt unsafe with that doctor all of a sudden. And so I found a midwife who would take me on that close to the end of my pregnancy. And it was a really good thing because my daughter ended up being born 13 days after her due date. And there was no way that an obstetrician in the Western medical system was going to let me, as a VBAC, carry a baby 13 days past their due date. So I had that experience. I couldn't be induced. I couldn't be done with it. I had to wait until she was ready to be born. And so she was born 41 and 6. And at the hospital that didn't want me to deliver there as a VBAC because we didn't know this, but when I was laboring at home, my midwife kept losing her fetal heart tones. And I know now I was transitioning, but her cord was wrapped around her neck twice. And so as she was transitioning, it was like she was being cut off by her cord. So, anyways, I ended up delivering her in the hospital. But again, like I don't my rebelliousness to authority, like it was no big deal for me to tell the doctors I don't want to be here. Like I want to be discharged. And so I asked my midwife, how long do I have to be here? And she's like 4 hours. Because anything that's going to happen at home usually will happen in a 4 hour time. And so she said, I want you to stay here 4 hours and then go home if you want. And so that's what I told the doctors. I was like, I don't want to be here after 4 hours. I want to go home. And they were like, well, you can go home, but your baby has to stay here. And I was like, no, I don't want you to take my baby out of my sight. Because by that time I was like, do not touch her eyes. Do not put any antibiotic ointment in her eyes. Do not touch her foot. Do not poke her with anything. Do not bathe her. Do not touch her. Do not take her out of my sight. Like I was very tense being in that environment. And they ended up bringing in a NICU nurse to evaluate her. They honored me. She stayed right by my bedside. And this older woman was like, your baby is beautiful. Her skin tone is gorgeous. She is a healthy baby. Good job, mama. Like just encouraging me and blessing me and favoring me. She said, she's perfect. So the nurse comes back in and I'm like, when can we leave? And she's like, well, I have to go through all this with you. And the very first thing she said was, if you take your baby out of the hospital against medical advice, your baby can die. And I was like, well, she can die if she stays here. So keep going. My daughter was born at 9 o'clock at night. We left the hospital at 3 o'clock in the morning. So I got what I wanted and I was able to go home. But it wasn't without like putting up a little bit of a fight. And the beauty of that day was it was Mother's Day of 2009. And so my kids, the older four, had gone to bed when I went into labor. And so they didn't even know I went to the hospital. And so they woke up that morning and mom was in bed and I had their new baby sister and life went on. But that was like another pivotal part in my health journey, in my journey into trying different things and experiencing different ways of doing things and challenging medical authority and.
This podcast is also sponsored by the Life Network. We've been calling it biblically clean streaming. We've been calling it Torah observant Netflix. What is it? What it really is a way to remap the landscape of the entertainment industry, not only for you and your children, but for their children, so that they won't have only perverse options to choose from. They won't have to choose between the maybe subliminally explicit Disney cartoons and the definitely explicit Netflix shows. They will be able to choose entertainment that aligns with their values and also does not spare on story and quality. That is our vision. It is a big vision. It's difficult to do. It's a startup business. It's being built in real time. We're editing these shows every day. We're filming these shows every week. We're putting out content every month. Each show, like Groundwork, a Homestead tour show, it comes out every month. 2x2, a matchmaking show, it comes out every month. Katie's Ladies Talk Show, it comes out every month. Now we have Jackson Pollock making his Mr. Fritter shows, which is a kids show that comes out every month. But during the month of April, he's going to have a show every single week. Boom, 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 boom. They're hilarious. He plays all these different characters. I can't wait for you guys to see this. The greatest thing about becoming like a founding member of this and helping us build the foundation of it is that you guys get to decide what we make. So you can use your brains and what you want to see, and you can force our bodies to do it. We did a poll and people voted. They voted for Kids Show the most. Cooking Show was pretty close though. So next month we're going to do a poll and we're going to say, do you guys want a cooking show or do you want this or that? And we'll pitch two other ideas. And we'll see what people vote for, and then we'll start in the process of making the next thing. So none of this can happen without you guys building the foundations of it. Everyone that we've been working with so far is Torah observant. The editors, our videographer, Dawson Schmidt, the ladies that are programming the site, is all ladies that are programming the site. They're killing it, by the way. Oh, we're getting a Roku app soon. So that's in the works. If you were on the fence because you thought, oh, they don't have Roku, well, we're going to have it. Thanks to Brittany. She's building it right now. So go to watchthelife.com and you can sign up. Sign up for, you can sign up for a month. You can sign up for a year. If you become a premium subscriber, then you can meet with Katie and I once a month on these live streams that we do. And we will send you this unbelievably beautiful mug that says Choose Life. Go to watchthelife.com and become part of this movement to move away from taking whatever Hollywood will hand us. Or any nice little, family-friendly movie they decide that they'll make every 10 years. Let's make our own thing. Let's make this happen. And if any of your children are artistic and want to work in this industry, then help build the foundation of something that maybe can employ them in the future. Go to watchthelife.com. Can I chime in here?
Yeah.
I'm so happy that you pushed back against what the doctors and nurses wanted you to do during delivery and leading up to delivery. And I'm so disgusted with the industry after everything I've seen with Katie and I've seen with my sister and my sister-in-law. Luckily, my sister-in-law has done all of them at home, and everything's been great for her. But it either of them that went to the hospital, they just had the same stories that you're telling me, where my sister, they told her the head's too big and all this crazy stuff. What is wrong with these people, man? It's not just an industry, it's also the people are they should not be doing this. This is wrong. I mean, how many times do you have to say the same thing to a mother before you realize that this is not true? This is just manipulation. I don't get it. I don't get it. I'm really glad you pushed back, and I am disgusted with this.
But I honestly think it was how I was raised, my opinion about authority and the controlling aspect of authority, being so sensitive to manipulation and being manipulated, that gave me that motivation and like ability to be that strong. This was my baby. Who are you to tell me what I'm going to do with my baby? Was my attitude, and my body. Who are you going to tell me what I'm going to do with my body? I'm not going to have a C-section because you don't want me to try to have it naturally. Like, that just didn't make sense to me. Again, I was just rebellious enough to say, no, I'm not. I'm going to figure it out a different way. And I did. And what I've learned in life is there's always a different way. There really is. There's not one way to do anything. And the medical system is what it is because of the standard of care. It's routine. Have you ever heard of the documentary, The Business of Being Born?
Yes, yes, we watched this.
I
Yes.
mean, what they show in there is how it goes. It's a business. It's not you're a number. They track how long you're in the room. There's a timer set. I mean, they're forcing these things on women. And now I've gone on to have two home births. My fifth daughter was natural, but I've had two home births since. And I have a different viewpoint now on all of that now because of those experiences too. Birth is very natural. Yah gave us women the ability to birth babies. That is ingrained in us. It's innate in us. And it is the mechanisms of man and the manipulation of man that gets women to believe, I can't do this. It's the fear, it's going to hurt. They put screaming women in movies. Like, women are manipulated to believe there's only one way to give birth, and that's through pain and agony. And they think they're going to be traumatized through this birthing experience. I can tell you, no. So I'll jump ahead a little bit, but my son, who's 7 now, was born Frank Breech. I don't know if you know what that is, but literally it's a baby folded in half. So his head was here, his feet were here, and his butt was down here. And that's how he was positioned in my womb. So when he was born, he came out butt first. I had him at home. So it's amazing to me. I don't understand physiology that allowed me to have him the way I had him, because in like a natural, normal, where the baby crowns, you feel pain where the baby crowns without getting graphic. They call it the ring of fire. And any woman who's had a natural birth with the baby head down knows what I'm talking about. It's an intense burning sensation right before the baby's head comes out, And I had experienced that with my first natural birth at the hospital. So with my son, he was just hanging there. I felt no pain. But every time I would have a contraction, it felt like my entire insides were just splitting. Like, I know people say they have an out-of-body experience. I really believe I had an out-of-body experience. It's wild, and if you don't have it yourself, it's hard to understand. But it was like I was up here in this mental state, telling myself down here in this state of pain I couldn't even process, just breathe. It's going to be okay. This one will pass. You can do this. Like, coaching myself. And all that I could literally do out loud was like literally moan in agony. And I mean, I was locked in. I was on an ottoman in our living room, and I was just dealing with, would he just come out? And I had 3 midwives there. I had the older midwife who delivered breech before. I had my attending midwife who never delivered breech before. And then I had the midwife that she was mentoring. So beyond just the opportunity it was giving me as a woman and for my son to be born in a unnatural way, it was giving my midwife the experience to be able to do that and say she did it for moms in the future. So it was like a progressive decision. I knew it was going to have implications beyond just our birth. But these three midwives were sitting behind me, and I'm begging them to do something, make him come out. I don't want to have another contraction. And they're literally like, no, Tara, your body knows what it's doing. You're doing an amazing job. You're birthing your baby. You can do this. And I remember saying, what did I hire you for? Like, literally, you're doing nothing. You're doing. But my son came out eventually, 20 minutes later, which felt
Aren't
like
you glad
forever.
they didn't do anything like the doctors would? They would have done everything.
They would have cut him out of me. They wouldn't have let me have him. And you know why they didn't? These are wise midwives. And anybody that is wise in midwifery know you don't touch a baby that is breech, because you could make them shock and they go up, and they could make them aspirate or get locked in their cord. It could choke them. So there was contraindications to touching a baby in a breech situation. And my midwife knew that. And I knew that too. There were contraindications for breech. So the two that I had to be mindful of being pregnant was, did I have enough amniotic fluid for him? And what position of breech was he in? Because there were a couple positions that they weren't safe. Like if he would have been head to toes and not folded, there was the chance he could deliver his foot and that like go through my cervix before I'm ready to actually have him. So there were things that were less safe than his situation, but we
Mm.
didn't have any of those. So we were wise in it. I wasn't just like reckless and not making sure things were checked. But there was nothing that they were telling me that made me believe I couldn't do it. And I knew 60 years ago that was what they did. You know, people had babies breech if they were breech. And so I didn't want to have a C-section. I just didn't. And so I was like, well, the only alternative to that is home. And that's what we were planning anyway. So let's just have him at home. So he was born at home. But backing up a little bit, because that skipped how we came into Torah.
And it probably also skipped the whole "didn't your husband have a vasectomy" question.
Yeah. So filling in those blanks, he had the vasectomy when our fifth daughter was born. Well, actually, before she was born in 2009. And then, like, she was probably 2, and I started to feel like brokenhearted, like literally, like, and I started to pray, don't let it work. Like, don't let the vasectomy work. Cause you hear about them failing, you know? And I was like, but if you're not gonna make the vasectomy not work, then just take the desire away. Because like, if you give us the desire of our hearts, and I have this desire for this baby boy, and you're not gonna give me one, just take it away. I don't want to desire one anymore. Well, the vasectomy worked and he never took the desire away. All the while, so around 2012, so uh, this was 9, 10, 11, 12, so about 4 years later, we were still going to the same church where he was baptized at, where we had, started to raise our children in our family. And we had things happen. There were things that happened in the church. They kind of got way more relaxed after they built on this big, $30 million addition. And you started to see their convictions kind of go by the wayside a little bit. And they became more seeker friendly and not so um, foundationally solid. But we kept on going to church because we didn't go there for them. No healthy people go to church. It's people who need a savior that go to church, right? So we're all at will to fail anytime. That's the way I looked at these failures of humanity. And so we kept going to church, kept serving in the ministry. And then all of a sudden I started to feel like we were being led away. And because I didn't think it was any person or situation, I really was sensitive to it being the Holy Spirit. And the only way that I could vocalize it or articulate it was I felt as though God was saying, it's time to leave home. Much like a child grows up in their home and then they leave and they move on, to build their adulthood in their life and stuff. That's what I felt like he was doing. Was he was calling us out of our home. I didn't know what the future looked like, but I had a sense that he was going to grow us up in to a next stage of our life and our walk with him. And so we left that church, and I remember my grandparents, my grandma more vocally, "You can't forsake the fellowship. You've got to go back to church. You need to go to church, so don't stay out of church for too long, keep going to church." And so there was this other church that a friend of mine had left, that church we left to go to. And so we decided to check that out. Well, it was apostolic. I didn't know what that meant. The church we had gone to before was non denominational. I now know it was like a Lutheran flavor, but it was non denominational otherwise. And so all of a sudden we're at this denominational church and it's apostolic. And we wanted to get into the ministry right away, the children's ministry, because our children were going to be in the children's ministry and we wanted to know the people that were taking care of them. It was kind of a safety thing. In order to be in the children's ministry or serve anywhere, you had to take their membership class. So we took their membership class, and it was in their membership class that we were introduced to dispensationalism. And I was like, wait a minute. I sat in the same church for 13 years and never heard that word before. Why all of a sudden do I come to your church and all of a sudden I hear this term? And because he said, your pastor just hasn't come to the full knowledge of the truth. And I was like, hmm. And so I remember going home and talking to Will, like, I don't like this, that I can't like immediately know he's wrong or he's right. Like, how do we know which pastor is right and which one's wrong? And we started to realize we didn't know our Bible for ourselves the way we thought we did, because all of a sudden this new idea was being presented to us and we didn't have the scriptural foundation to be able to say no with confidence. That's wrong, you know? And so it planted this seed in Will and I to want to know our Bible for ourselves and to stop just knowing the verse the pastor talks about and writing not what the pastor talks about in notes and letting that sink in, but really starting to look at things contextually and go back and read things for ourselves and see the big picture. And so we continued at that church for a little while, but that same year, 2012, around fall, another stirring of the Holy Spirit. I just felt like I had to finally decide what we were going to do with this Halloween thing. We never celebrated Halloween. I did as a kid because of my family influence. I don't know that I celebrated Halloween, but they did, and because they did, I did. But when I became a mom and when we started having that season come up for my daughter, we did the Harvest Fest or the trunk or treat at church. And I never let her dress up in, you know, evil costumes or witches or anything like that, but she'd be like a princess or a ballerina or something like that. But something in me still felt unsettled about the whole thing. And we did that for several years. And then for whatever reason in 2012, it was just like, okay, you need to deal with this now. And so I went on YouTube one night after everybody had gone to bed and I just looked up a video on the origins of Halloween. And it happened to be a playlist, not about just the origins of Halloween, but the origins of every single holiday that I had ever celebrated in its pagan roots. And I just watched them one after the other. I was like my whole world view was shattering. Like what have I done and what have I led my family to believe? Like what have we done? Like I was just beside myself. And we made it all about Jesus. Like how how could this happen? And so that same week, like the next day, Will woke up and I was like, I gotta tell you something. Like we can't do these things anymore. Like not just Christmas and Easter, but no Valentine's Day, no Patrick's Day, like nothing. It's all pagan. It's all evil. Like, it's all nothing I want to be a part of. And and so, like, to help him, I was like, maybe we should go meet with the pastor, you know? And so we went to the pastor at the Apostolic Church, same person that led the membership meeting, and introduced us to dispensationalism. And I told him what had happened, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I mean they were right. That's all pagan, but we can redeem anything for Jesus. If we want to have Santa in the sanctuary, we can have Santa there for Jesus." And I was just like so disappointed because I didn't really say this to him, but I just left there feeling like this is so lame. Like, where is your I don't know. It just did not settle with me at all. All appreciation and zeal I had for Christmas was gone. I mean, I had zero. It was gone for anything. I didn't have excitement for anything anymore. Nothing. And I think that was a little hard for my family because I really liked Christmas. I like the decorations and I like to make it a warm, inviting, intimate thing for them. But when it lost meaning, it lost everything for me. And we ended up selling our house in 2014. We never set up a tree again. We never did stockings again. We did go to my grandma's for, Christmas dinner. We did exchange gifts, but for our family, we stopped doing gifts and we did experiences. And it was just because we had time off during that year. The time of year really wasn't anything to do with Christmas. But in 2014, we sold our house. We sold all our Christmas stuff, except for personalized item like ornaments that we had collected over the years. Something else I left out in between that time, important. I think it was 2013. I landed a job as an artist representative for a local radio personality who was also a rapper. You know him as George Moss. So George worked at Way FM, which is one of our local radio stations. And my upbringing, when I changed my music, I went to Christian hip hop. Like, I liked Christian hip hop. And my kids liked it too. That was like the clean way to like have fun, upbeat music, I guess. A lot of people will say that's not a holy music, but I think there's a place for things, and especially for children. Like, they're gonna do that if you don't give them an alternative, and I think these Christian rappers give them an alternative, that's important, and, um and so I liked going to concerts, and I liked having fun with my girls, and, you know, we went to this, music festival called the Big Ticket Festival that our local, radio stations put on, and it was like any big, event that people would put on. And it was a big deal in West Michigan. All the radio stations and churches and all of that would get together and we'd have this weekend festival. Well, I think it was WCSG or WayFM. They were sister stations. We're doing this contest for the Big Ticket Festival. And the person who could book the most George Moss little concerts would win this contest. And so I was like, bet, like I can do this. And so that's how I met George on a like personal to personal level, because I started booking these like short concerts for him at these local churches. And really what it was he was an artist at the Big Ticket Festival, so he was like advertising what would be at the Big Ticket Festival. So that was kind of the drive from the festival organization. But all I knew was I wanted a free trip for my family to the Big Ticket Festival. So, well, then after it was all said and done, George and I continued to talk, and I said, "So did I do a good job?" And he was like, yeah. What do you think about working for me?" And I was like, "Sure. Like, what do you want me to do?" And he was like, "I need you to be my artist representative." And I was like, "Tell me what to do." And so I was in charge of his contract. I was in charge of dealing with everybody that wanted to book him. And I booked one of his tours with another band across the country. And he was just like, "Yeah, I've never had anybody do for me what you're doing for me." So we established this really good relationship. Well, in handling his contracts say that he will like they need to not give him pork and shellfish for catering. Because you have to tell them what you're willing to eat and stuff and anything that you need restricted. And he had pork and shellfish restricted on his contract. Well, from reading the Bible when I was a teenager, I remember the Bible said those were unclean foods. And so that was a seed in my head of he does things the Bible says, and that made me curious. And then through connecting with him on social media, I started to see that he kept Passover. And I would ask him about it. Hey, I saw you had a Passover meal. And he was like, yeah, had dinner with my mentor and his family. Not really because he was convicted we needed to keep the feasts, but I could tell. And now looking back, Yah was doing something in his life too with these seeds. He was doing things without really understanding the big picture long before. And then when I came into his life, he was able to, plant more seeds in me because I had the seeds planted when I was a teenager. But my grandma always told me, well, yes, honey, but Jesus changed all that. That was just how she reconciled all that. But I knew it was there. I knew it was in the scriptures. Um, and so, yeah, that's how my relationship with George started. And then those seeds of, Torah started being planted with him in particular. Well, in 2013, we decided to bring all of our daughters home to homeschool. And I just got too distracted. I couldn't devote the same amount of time to working for him as I wanted to because I now had my children to tend to and devote myself to. And so I resigned from being his artist representative. But the timing was great because it wasn't even a month later and he met Michelle and they started courting. And I think my last meeting with him was December of 2013 and they were married in March of 2014. So it was like a really quick thing for him too. He now had a wife and because that's what I told him. I was like, you need a wife. I remember telling them that before our last meeting. I was like, George, you need a wife. You need somebody to help you. You need, man's not good alone. You need somebody doing these things to help you. And along she came. And so our families then became friends. We didn't lose connection. But we weren't like hanging out together as much. I was really busy homeschooling and he was busy being a newly married man. And then they got pregnant right away. They also had a honeymoon baby. So by December of 2014, Michelle was big and pregnant, for their baby. And prior to that time, I had bought a birthday gift or not a birthday, but a baby gift for them. And so I just texted George and I was like, hey, I got a baby gift for you. Can I meet up with you guys to give it to you? Like when are you around? And he was like, you want to come over Saturday? You want to stay for a Bible study? And by that time, Will and I were hungry for anybody who would sit and read the Bible with us, outside of a church setting where you can be vulnerable and ask questions and challenge things that you've been taught. And like the home setting felt way more, um, you know, more likely to present that opportunity. And so I was like excited, not just to give them the baby gift, but like they want to do Bible study with us. This is awesome. And so we get there and it's Saturday, Sabbath. They knew that. And they want to have a Bible study because they're keeping Sabbath. They knew that. We didn't know that. But I gave them the gift and they opened it and all that. And then you could tell they were ready to just like let it in. And they were like, so we're not celebrating Christmas anymore. And I was kind of like, big deal. We don't really celebrate Christmas anymore either. Like, good for you. Like, I'm glad. I'm glad you guys have come to this realization, but it wasn't like the jaw dropping. Like, I could tell, like, they thought it would be like this really stunning surprise. But I was more like, good for you. Like, I think Christmas is lame too, you know? And they were like, no, there's more than that. And George went on to be like, the only scripture that they had in the New Testament was the Old Testament. Everything they were quoting in the New Testament was the Old Testament. And he said, have you ever seen this passage in Deuteronomy where he says, do not worship me the way the pagans do? And I kid you not, when I read that, my heart dropped into my stomach. I was like, what have we done? not only is Christmas lame, but it offends God. Like, it's offensive to him. We have been offending him. And I think the grievous nature of our decisions and actions, even though we didn't know what we were doing, literally broke my heart for him. Like, I am so sorry. I am so sorry we have done this. And it was not a hard transition for me because once I knew all that offended him, there was no way we were having any part of Christmas ever again. And I mean, we went as far as going home and those personalized ornaments that we had saved when we sold all our Christmas decorations. We put them all in a bag and our whole family went outside and we took hammers to them. I mean, destroyed them. I wanted no part of anything that grieved my father's heart. Like, I took it that seriously. And from that day, December 6th of 2014, we have been keeping Sabbath. We'll have our 12th Passover here this week, actually. Um, George and Michelle were the only people that we had to fellowship with. And we were the only people they had to fellowship with because he told me he did the same thing that he did with Will and I to other friends, and nobody wanted to get it. Nobody responded the way we did. But I really believe we were being prepared, you know, since we had left the church. This is what he was leading us to. This was the growing up he wanted us to do. Um, and I don't know what's going on with the other people, you know, maybe they just weren't being prepared or whatever, but because nobody else was really catching on or wanting to join them, it was just us and the Mosses, really. We had our first Passover together. We watched The Prince of Egypt together at their house. Um, we did our first Shavuot together. We did Sabbath a lot together. We had our first Sukkot together. George convinced me that the world was going to end. Only because he was convinced of that himself. You know, maybe there was going to be this big earthquake. And, you know, your beans, your bullets, and your Band-Aids, we had to have those. And I was like, we don't have those, you know? So we got, you know, real busy on doing all this. And we went up in northern Michigan and we set our tents up and we had our first Sukkot together. And, you know, our kids had friends, you know, that were keeping the Sabbath too in their family. And so that was like our first season and year together was with the Mosses. So, um, I mean, they were just very, very influential to us. And we ended up, so this was 2015, right? That this all happened. Well, what happened in 2016? These people released this documentary called The Way, and we figured out we weren't alone in Grand Rapids, Michigan. There were people all over the country that wanted to keep the Sabbath and the feasts. Well, I can't remember exactly what that 2016 was a really big year for a lot of things, but I remember Zach had Daniel De Leon on talking about circumcision. And I don't remember if that came before or after The Way came out. I don't know if you remember either, but
I don't know. He talked about it in the first edit of The
the
Way, so
uncut version.
I
Yeah.
I ass I assume it was, just after because he moved out there from California, out near Zach.
Yeah. I think it
So but I
I
might be
think it
wrong.
was because I think when you released the first one, people responded to you like crazily, right? Like, "Oh my gosh, that can't be in there. That can't be in there." And we
Yeah.
have the uncut version and the after version too, like, because I thought it was wild. I was like, so the reason being because Will wasn't circumcised. So, oh, exactly. So all of a sudden, this guy is getting on publicly saying how he in his adulthood circumcised himself, and I was like, oh baby, is it time? Because we had two Passovers, and you read very clearly that's a sign of the covenant. I mean, to keep the Passover, you had to be circumcised, you know? And so I know we're just memorializing it, but after it comes up cyclically at time after time, and again, I know Will would not have gotten physically circumcised if his heart was not circumcised. So that was not even an issue of concern. But when that came out, Will started entertaining the idea of, I think it's time. I think it's time I get circumcised. So we reached out to Daniel. Well, we knew Zach because we were getting ready to Sukkot with him and Jamie on their homestead for Sukkot in 2016 that year. And so we had already been in contact with them. And so I reached out to Zach and I was like, would Daniel do circumcision for Will? Or like, do you know of anybody else who's doing this? Because you go to a doctor and it's either going to be thousands and thousands of dollars, or they're going to think you're absolutely crazy and not do it right. Or, it's just dangerous, I think. And so they ended up connecting us with, I'm going to say his name because a lot of people know him, James Ban. And a lot of people in the Torah community know him. And so we just scheduled we talked to him on the phone. He was an army medic. He worked as a urologic nurse. So he was in urology, not as a doctor, but as a nurse. And he was confident he knew how to do it, that he'd done it for other people and he could do it. And so we traveled. We traveled before Sukkot, actually. Like, it was quick. It was a quick process. Once he knew he was doing it, it was like boom, boom, boom. We traveled to Arkansas. I remember getting like 30 minutes to James and Kitty's house and being like, "Well, what did we do? Like, we don't know these people and they're going to do what to you? Are you really okay with this?" We just both had peace. And so we went and spent the weekend with Kitty and James's family, and Will came back a circumcised man. And then, so when he was having that discussion with James, I was like, "So could we do a 2 for 2? Could you like be circumcised and get your vasectomy reversed at the same time?" And James was like, "I'm not doing that. Like, no, that I'll do the circumcision, but I'm not doing the vasectomy reversal." But Will started to entertain the idea of reversing his vasectomy. And I was like, "Really? You will?" Because he was not, he was done having kids. He was like, "I'm choking. I'm choking. I just want a wife. Like, I can't do this anymore." So when he was like, "Yeah, I'll do it." So I found this place in Oklahoma. All they do is reversals. It's called the Reversal Clinic. And they only do it for families who had a change of heart. So before Sukkot, he had the circumcision. We left Zach and Jamie's after Sukkot, and he went and had his vasectomy reversed in Oklahoma. So it was like literally 4 or 5 months. He went through it, you know? But
Whoa.
the way came out, and those people were like now my people. Like, it was just, I didn't even have like, obviously they weren't, they were people, but it was like I looked up Amanda on Facebook, and I messaged her on Facebook, and I was like, "Hey, I just saw the Way documentary. Oh my gosh, you were so influential. Like, she made me cry with her bold when she talked about being bold and how it gave her a boldness, because I felt like it had done the same thing for me, that coming to see these things in scripture." And Jason talked about Yah's mercies and showing him the way. And it's not just a line in a documentary. Like, it's the truth. That is exactly what happened for me too. Like, it's his mercy. I came from brokenness, and he was merciful enough to help me clean up my life and start living for him and show me the way. Like, that's real for my life too. And so Amanda and I got to talking, and we started talking about our families and our kids' ages and stuff. And she's like, "Hey, why don't you guys come down for New Year's?" And I was like, "Sure." you know, we're just these strangers, and they're just strangers, but they invited us, and they seemed like, I mean, they were in your documentary. They must be safe. Um, sure. So we went down December of 2016, and we celebrated, not really celebrated, but we had that New Year's time with the Tao family. We stayed at their house, our whole family, and got to know their family and got to learn about pursuing truth and visit their fellowship there in Georgia. And so we were connected. I also reached out to Dr. Monzo because he was just in Ohio and I'm in Michigan. So I was like, "I want to see you. Like, you're in Torah and you're a naturopath. Like, I want to know what you do and I want to learn from you. And I want you to tell me what you can do to help my family." And so that happened, and then also when Will, was going to be circumcised, this boldness of these Torah people, I reached out to people in the way who were along that journey, and I was like, "Hey, would you be okay with our family staying with you so we don't have to, like, rent a hotel or something? Like, could we fellowship with you on our way down and on our way back?" So we actually stayed with, another Lu Lu Heather and gosh, I can't
Or
remember
Llewellyn.
Llewellyns,
Llewellyn.
yeah. We actually we actually stayed with them on the way back, their family, and got to know them and everything. So, we were getting to know a lot of people just from the documentary and Facebook and social media and the accessibility, right? Well, then all that happened, and, um, 2017 came around, and from Jason's story, he had caught the attention of this, church or this assembly in Texas, right? And so they had invited us. They were going up to Shalom Assembly in Illinois, and they were like, "Hey, we're gonna be really close to you guys. Why don't you come down? It's Winter Musicians Fest, and we can fellowship together and, enjoy the Winter's Musician Fest together and stuff." And so we did. We traveled down from Michigan and met them at Shalom Assembly and did Winter's Musicians Fest with them. And that's when we met you and Katie. And we went over the blueprints for what is now Pursuing Truth with Jason and Amanda. And we met, Chris and Hector. And we just met all these people, um, the Wilsons and, Dwayne and Elise. And they told us about people they knew in Michigan that we didn't know that lived by us. And so all of these connections were starting to be made and our horizons were further expanding. Well, again, social media, we were trying to get our kids to like a Torah kids camp. But after trying a couple and then being like, I don't want to go back there, like, you can't force teenagers to like something. Like, we could not force fellowship on them no matter how we tried. And so um, the Shalom Assembly came out with this Youth for Yahweh camp, and that was a new camp. And so I asked my girls, will you try another camp? And they were willing to try another one. They just didn't want to go back to ones they'd already been at. And so they tried it and they loved it. They came back and they were like, we met all these friends from Texas and, we want to go back to camp. And do you think we could go down there and celebrate the feast with them? Yeah, at that time, it was like, no, those are your friends, not our friends. Like, that's a big family trip. We don't know them, we're not doing that. So we continued to keep the feasts and stuff in Michigan with our fellowship. By the time our second oldest daughter, the only one that went to traditional high school, we got together with our kids one day and we were like, what's one thing you wish we would hear you out about? Like, what's one thing you feel like we're just not listening to you? And you really wish we would consider this thing for you and you really want us to hear you out about? And that daughter said, I really want to go to high school. It's my dream. And so we said, you know what? We trust you. There's no reason we can't try it. So as long as you're willing to take it on a year by year or semester by semester or month by month basis, whatever it takes, and as long as it doesn't keep you from being able to put the feast first and, keep the Sabbath and those things front and center, sure, we'll try high school. So she ended up going to high school all 4 years. We sent a letter to the school every year, just asking them to please excuse her for all these dates and the feast days, just like they excuse Christmas, not for it to, count against them as absences. And the school was very kind to do that. So anyway, she moved to, I jumped ahead. She graduated high school in 2021 and she decided she wanted to go to Cisco, Texas to be with her friends from camp after she graduated from camp that year and celebrate Sukkot. And that was the year that our baby burned her hand too. Anyways, we were like, sure, you can go, pay for your plane ticket, you have our blessing, no big deal, go to Cisco for the feast. Well, then she called us while she was there, and we were in Ohio with Dr. Monzo with our baby, And she was like crying and she was like, "These are my people, mom. I want to move here." And I was like, "Praise Yah," because I really wasn't sure. She didn't have any friends that kept Sabbath or kept the feast. She had good Christian friends, but not anybody that keeps the Sabbath or the feast in Michigan. And so the fact that she was choosing to leave that place to go be with her friends that do align with her faith a little bit better and more, more comfortably was like a blessing to me that she was choosing that way. And so we ended up moving her down there between Christmas and New Year's of 2021. And then we started to entertain the idea of moving too. And we visited there like 3 times. I remember asking Amanda, "Are there a lot of kids there? Is it a great place?" She had positive things to say about it. And we ended up moving there. So our daughter moved there between Christmas and New Year's of 2021. We moved there April 1st of 2022. So all very quick as well. Um, but that really moving to Cisco is what propelled me into where I'm at now with health because Cisco gave us our company. Cisco gave me a platform to learn from and to educate from. So I had a lot of learning to do too because for 20 years I had taken care of my family and our family's needs with herbs, but I believed what everybody else said. Not everything everybody else said, but I was trusting other people to teach me what I needed for these situations. Now all of a sudden, I was the person people were looking to give them that information and I wanted to make sure I knew what I was talking about. So, I went back to my studies and I started to study a bit more hardcore and really envision what do I want to stand for? What do I believe in? How do I want to form this company? It was actually around Sukkot. We were living in Cisco and we were getting ready in August. We always do like a round of elderberry syrup for our family just to boost our immune systems getting ready for Sukkot because you're with a lot of people, you're out in nature. It's the fall season's changing. A lot of things can get, you know, moving and give you symptoms that aren't comfortable and stuff. And so we wanted our immune systems to be really strong. And so while I was making elderberry syrup for our family, Will was like, "Hey, why don't you make extra and just offer it to the community?" And so I felt what's there's there to lose. So I did. And it literally went viral in Cisco. We sold so much elderberry syrup. It was unreal. I was like, we're having to like buy in wholesale bottles and stuff now. And I'm like having to figure out how to buy bulk herbs. And then I was like, well, we should have a name, right? For our company. Like, should we have an elderberry company? And so we went to church with another believer who has a ministry, John Lawson, and his wife Riley. And we had become friends with them. And I was like, "Hey, John, can you like make a graphic for us? And this is what I'm thinking of the name." And it was the Maker's Medicine, I think was the original name. And like, "Can you kick back something for us so we have like a logo and a brand name and like we can like make this legit?" And he kicked back this logo and this name, and it was an olive leaf in this circle. I loved it. And it said Maker's Mark Herbals. And I was like, that is it. And we were like in this texting group chat, and my husband chimed in and he's like, "That's also the name of $1 billion whiskey company." And I was like, "So what?" I like it. It's ours. We're going to share. And so that's literally what we went with. And we started, I used to handwrite all of our labels mostly. Like that was our label for social media. And like, um, I think we had elderberry labels printed first or maybe stickers, but we became Maker's Mark Herbals. And then we got invited by a farmer's market to come to their farmer's market. And then people started asking us, "Well, do you make this? And do you make this?" And I'm like, "Well, no, but I can." And one thing after another, here we are, all these years later, I just kept going with it. And so that's how I went from just taking care of my family and studying for my family's sake to now working with people and being a face of a company. And
Wow,
then
your journey is amazing.
well, and then we did have 2 more kids. So the vasectomy reversal did work. I had my son a year and a half later after the vasectomy was reversed. He's now 7, and then yeah, gave us another little baby girl. They were both born at home in Michigan, and then we moved after that. Yeah. Oh, and by the way, to put to rest the baby's head, my last baby's head at birth was 15 centimeters wide. So I said, how did I push her out if I only supposed to dilate to 10? She was 10 pounds. Her head was 15 around. So
So
if I
basically,
can
no
do,
matter how big the baby's head is, women can get the baby out.
I think we can. I think we can.
So don't listen to those scare tactics because that's what they are. It's just so bizarre. It is so bizarre that the people you're supposed to trust with all this information that you really have the least exposure to as an everyday citizen, as an everyday American or everyday anyone. No one knows about all this stuff very much. It's anything we used to know is all lost knowledge. So you're trusting these people. So did that inspire you at all to get into, I guess, naturopathic stuff, into making these preparations and everything, the
All of it.
elderberries?
So our oldest daughter is pregnant right now for her first baby, our first grandchild. And she has trusted me enough to really provide all her prenatal care. I was able to order her first trimester blood work. She was really concerned about her hormone levels. Just, first time pregnant, I had a miscarriage. She's just concerned, about miscarriage and stuff. She wanted to know the pregnancy was strong. And so I was able to help her get all of her blood work. Her insurance was really expensive and she didn't have any at the start. And I was like, well, I can take care of you. And so I was able to help her hear the heartbeat for the first time. She's actually planning a home birth. I was able to help her find a home birth midwife that we could be comfortable with. I'm providing her all of her prenatal nutrition. So, learning everything the hard way and through my own experiences has made me want better in every situation. Did you get the email that I sent you? The pictures I sent you?
I may not have if you sent it recently.
I sent it last night, late last night. Things I
Yes,
knew.
you did. But you also said that you have a queasy stomach, and I thought I can't look at this morning.
Oh,
I thought I have to look at this later. I did. Yes, I didn't look at the pictures, but I did kind of see, and then thought I can't do this. I don't have a queasy stomach, but I just wasn't ready for it. Oh my gosh! Yes, you have to tell people about this though.
well, what I sent those for you for was so you know that I've been in the trenches. I'm not just an armchair herbalist regurgitating information I found on the internet or in a book I read somewhere. I have literally been in the trenches for my family. For whatever reason, Yah has allowed us to learn everything the hard way. We have learned from experience, you know? And I had to go through a little bit of a journey with my daughter born with spina bifida because I was young and they like to tell you it's a genetic condition, but I had a little bit of a time where I felt guilty and like it was my fault that she was born this way. And Yah really counseled me to see that he is sovereign even in that. And if you really think about it, there are drug addicts who pop out kid after kid after kid after kid after kid. And yeah, sure, those kids may have like mental things or some deficiencies, but you don't see them all being born with spina bifida. I mean, yes, I had baby after baby after baby after baby, but that I wasn't a drug addict and I was taking care of myself better than a drug addict, I thought, just that parallel of realizing that, yes, even in her being born with spina bifida, he was sovereign and there was something that I could learn from that. It hasn't been perfect. Um, she does have she does have effects of being born with spina bifida. We can't deny that. But she's a walking testimony. She walks, something they said she would never do. Um, she is, for the most part, uh, self sufficient, in her self care needs. She has a job. those kinds of things. Um, but going through that lo- really helped me see that these things we were experiencing, Yah was sovereign over them. You know, when my daughter burned her hand, she was only 13 months old. This was a traumatic injury for a little baby. I mean, you're talking about this little tiny baby hand just traumatized. And I had been away with a friend having coffee. And so the call that I got was FaceTime, and Will never interrupts my time with friends. And all of a sudden he's calling and on FaceTime. And the FaceTime view was my daughter's hand in the sink and just all her skin at the tip of her fingers. And she's screaming. And I'm like, what happened? And he's trying to tell me what happened. And I was just like, all right, I'm on my way. And on the way home, I called our doctor, and our doctor is amazing. He's a pro-life doctor out of West Michigan. Um, and he respected our right to choose, never pressured us about vaccinations, was really great, great, great physician. So there are those out there, by the way. But I called him and I was like, I had to leave a message, and he called me back and he's like, hey, I'll call in order of Silvadene after I get out of church. He's like, keep it cool and watch for infection. So he wasn't even like, take her to the ER, nothing like that. He was just real practical about it. I'm going to call in an order of Silvadene for you when I get out of church. Keep it cool and watch for infection. And so that's what I did. I went home. I called my friend who was an ICU nurse. She came over and I nursed my baby because that comforted her, right? And everybody was looking at her hand, and we just tried to keep it cool. And then meanwhile, I'm on my phone and I'm going, herbal alternative to Silvadene. Because that's what I do. Like anything they recommend, I just go, what's the herbal alternative? And that's what starts my journey into the other side of things. Well, I found a study about Manuka honey and Silvadene. Manuka honey being more powerful and effective than Silvadene. We had Manuka honey in our cabinet. So we just started slathering her hand before I could even get the prescription from the doctor with Manuka honey and wrapping it up. And I started messaging herbalists that, I knew things more than I did. What would you suggest? What do you suggest? And we started taking pictures. And I mean, it was a full circumferential degloving. So from about right here at her wrist, it just slid.
Maybe I am queasy. Maybe I am one of these. I don't get like queasy myself, but I can just imagine it so much. I just the word degloving is. I wish
It
they
was
had a
bad.
different word,
It was
but that's
bad.
what it
So
was. Oh,
I can shorten that by just saying that we kept her home for 3 days, and then she had a bunch of dead skin, like really thick skin hanging off of her fingers, and just a little hand, obviously, but she was in a lot of pain, and the herbs weren't touching it, nursing wasn't touching it. So I called our doctor, and he's like, if you want her to have any more, you're gonna have to take her in. And I was like, okay, we will. So we took her in, and they got her more comfortable with some narcotics, and they said she's gonna have to be debrided. And the urgent care said we can, wasn't urgent care, it was a private ER, said we can do it here, but she's gonna be really uncomfortable. She would be best served if you take her to the children's hospital. We will do it here, but if it were my kid, I would take them to the children's hospital because they can just make them so much more comfortable. And so we were like, okay, we'll take her down there and get her cleaned up. We knew that needed to happen. Well, we get there and they're like, where have you been for 3 days? And we were like, taking care of her? Well, doing what? And I'm like, well, she's not infected. Obviously, we weren't neglecting her. But they were so concerned with why it took us so long to get her there. They were almost distracted from taking care of her. Anyways, they called social work on us and they did her debriding. And then they wanted to take over all her bandage changes. And I didn't really understand at that point. I was just feeling pressure, like we better listen to them while I think this through. And so they bandaged her up after the debriding, and then they wanted us to leave that bandage on and then see them on Friday, which this was like the middle of the week. So it wasn't even a week that we would have to wait. So we went on Friday and they changed her bandage, but that's all they did. And I didn't realize that. But they just changed her bandage so that the burn doctor could take a look at her hand. And he came out and he said, she's going to need a skin graft. And we do that with cadaver skin. And because I know what Dr. Manzo teaches, he teaches against organ transplants and he teaches against doing those things. And so I just immediately said, it's against my religion. Like, we can't do that. It's against our religion. And he was like, well, the doctor was like, well, there is another option, but that puts her more at risk at keloid scarring and all these other things, but we can try it. So we'll just look at how things are on Friday when you come back for her bandage change. And I said, is that really all you're doing is changing her bandage when we come back? And he said, yeah, we just need to keep monitoring it, when you come back. And we left there and I said, well, we can't go back there because they are re-traumatizing her every time they change her bandage. And we can do that. We were doing that. They literally made her be NPO, means nothing orally. So I couldn't nurse her, which comforted her a lot. I mean, I nursed her on demand because she needed that comfort. And then they were traumatizing her with a needle to sedate her just to change her bandage. And I was like, I'm not going to do that anymore. We're not going to do this anymore. So we were actually in the parking lot of our chiropractor because he's also a wild, rebellious doctor who would give us good advice. And I called Dr. Manzo and I was like, we've had this traumatic injury. Our baby's really hurt. She was badly burned. They want to do cadaver skin grafts. We know we're not to do that. Can we come to you? And he said, I haven't looked at the schedule, but just come. We'll set you up in the back room. And so we took off from Michigan and went to Ohio. We got a residence inn room and we were there for almost a month. And we would we would change her bandage in the morning. We would open up her bandage and then we would clean it off in the sink, let running water run over her hand. And then Will would pour colloidal silver over it and kind of like touch it like this just to do a gentle debriding. And Dr. Manzo actually taught us part of his Aleph Tav body to where we could place our hands so that her blood was clotting at the tip of her fingers so that she wasn't profusely bleeding. And it was pretty wild. So we would do that. And then we would slather her hand in Manuka honey, rewrap her. And then we would go to Dr. Manzo's clinic and we were sitting in the back and we were running Rife and we were doing laser treatment with the vials that he puts in there after scanning her. He scanned her and then we had the frequencies in the vial, particularly for her and her healing. And we just kept doing that and we just saw changes happening like visually because we were checking her every day. We just saw change after change after change. And all of a sudden we saw new skin forming and you just saw this little hand come back. And you know how much time that took? 27 days. 27 days from the time of injury to the time she had a new hand. No skin graft, no hospital involvement beyond the initial debridement, which I do think she needed that. If they weren't available, we probably could have done it with with surgical tools and stuff. But it wouldn't have been fun. I think it would have been emotionally traumatic. So I'm grateful the hospital was available for that, but they wanted to take over and we didn't want that. And so we took that on ourselves and did the things that we knew to do. And when we got home, CPS was in our driveway. And so by that time she had a healed hand. I mean, it was still healing, but it was intact, fully intact. And she could move it and use it. I remember she gripped my chapstick like this. And I was like, praise Yah. Like she had a grip, And so CPS was there and we let him in and the lady wanted to interview our kids and see that we had food in the fridge and see where they slept and all that. And then she said, the accusation against you is negligence. So we just need you to take her one place to follow up. We don't care if you go back to Ohio. And I said, no, let's go back to the burn clinic. Let's show them what we did, what the body did. We just supported her. The body really did it. And so we went back to the same burn clinic. You'll believe this, but it's unbelievable. They were just in awe, looking over her little hand and how beautiful it was, no sign of scarring. And they said, good job, Mom and Dad. And I said, are you going to tell CPS that? Because you guys reported us to CPS because we were negligent. So are you going to tell them that we did a good job? Is that going to be on record? And she said, she kind of just ignored me, but she said, there is one thing I want you to do. I would like you to consult with OT, occupational therapy, to make sure that she can, she's using her hand properly. She's not delayed in any way. And so I was like, sure, we'll do that. So we consulted with OT again. I mean, they watched her for like a half an hour and she came back and she was like, good job, mom and dad. She's beautiful. Anything we would want a child to do, she can do. She's right on track. I don't see any concern of a delay. And so we were getting all this beautiful feedback and just like, yeah, we chose the right way, not doing things their way. You know what ended up in her medical record? I have it. I have her medical record because they put it up in her file. They literally say, patient fully healed after parents followed our orders. So it's not even in her medical chart that we were negligent. It says in her medical chart that we followed doctor's orders, and that's why she healed.
What's going on?
And then the foot, I sent you the pictures of the foot. So our daughter with spina bifida, that would have either been amputation after a wound back. I mean, amputation of toes or potentially her whole foot once it became necrotic. Um, she had the injury in Michigan and we thought it was mostly healed, but there was like just one open part on her foot that just would not close. The
What
body
was
is
the injury, just for everyone else?
so because of the spina bifida, she's got nerve damage and she doesn't feel her feet like you and I do. She doesn't have the same sensations. And so she developed, if this was her left foot, the bottom of her pinky right here, her pinky toe, developed a blister. Well, she kept walking on it because she didn't feel the blister. You and I, we have blisters to make us realize we're putting too much pressure on that. We need to maybe baby it and change our shoes or something. She doesn't get that feedback. So she kept walking on it. We didn't know because we're not checking her feet. I mean, she's old. She was older by then. And that blister turned into an ulcer on the outside of her foot, a pressure ulcer essentially. And so it was a nasty wound that was just external right here in Michigan. And we got it to where it healed, but it was just this line that was not healing. And I just kept thinking, the body's trying to tell us something. The body is always trying to tell you something. And I felt like that line there was telling us there was something going on inside. It couldn't completely close. And sure enough, we got distracted with our move in Texas, and Cisco was pretty far away from any medical establishments. But when we moved out of Cisco and got into DFW, it was kind of looking sad again. And so we brought her to a a wound healing place to try to get them to debride it and clean it up to get it to start healing again. And they wanted her to go to infectious disease because they said she had developed osteomyelitis. Well, I knew something was going on inside. And so that was just confirming, yeah, she has a bone infection because of this. That's why the skin wasn't healing and why the body wasn't healing that part of her foot because there's something going on inside I couldn't see. And so I let them hospitalize her because they said she had osteomyelitis. I'd never dealt with that before. And so I was kind of scared for her that she may lose her foot and I didn't want to do the wrong thing. And so they hospitalized her and I get to the hospital and what they wanted to do was run a round of IV antibiotics because that would get systemically through the blood and get the infection in the foot was the idea. Well, I get to the hospital. She's not hooked up to anything. She's just laying in the bed. There's no nurses coming in for 4 hours. I'm like, what are we doing here? Like, I can do this. I can take care of her at home. Like, she doesn't need to be here. If they're done running the antibiotics, then she doesn't need to be here. Well, they wanted to keep her there because they wanted to biopsy her foot. So I said, that's not happening. So just let us go home. And so the doctor ended up calling me and she was like, this is the standard of care. We do IV antibiotics. We biopsy the tissue. I said, why do you want a biopsy? You just treated her for a bone infection. You already believe she has a bone infection. So why further traumatize the bone by taking a biopsy just to confirm what you already think you know, which you already treated? Why do you need to do that? And she said, "That's the standard of care. That's what we do. This is what we do." And she just kept repeating, "These are the steps that we take." And I was like, "Okay, well, I don't I don't want that to happen." And she said, "Well, I'm not going to hold you hostage. So I will let her go home with you, but just promise me if things worsen, you'll bring her back." I said, "I promise. I will." So we brought her home, and I literally just was like, "Okay, here we are. We know what they're offering us. You know, we don't want that. So we're just going to have to figure this out for ourselves." And I thought about, what do I know? When you're dealing with your own situation, it's really hard sometimes to tap into what you know because you're fully invested. So you're not always thinking clearly. You got emotions involved. It's someone you love. It's not always that easy to tap into what you know. But I just took a moment to pause and I'm like, what do I know? And I literally thought of castor oil because castor oil penetrates deep into the tissue. And then I thought of comfrey, which is an herb that is known as knit bone. It will regenerate bone. So much you have to be careful with it because it won't set bone. So you have to make sure the bone is set to be able to use it for bone. And it will also heal deep wounds superficially. So you can't put it on deep wounds. But I had that knowledge, and this was a closed wound by this point because we were putting it on the top. We weren't putting it on the bottom where the open wound was. We were putting it on the top. I extracted comfrey into castor oil, and then I extracted cayenne pepper into it too, because wherever fresh blood is, there's healing. And cayenne pepper will increase the circulation to the wound area. So I just extracted.
How do you extract it?
So you
Sorry
just
about
take, no, it's fine. It's common knowledge to people who know how to do extractions. So you just take, for us, we take a large amount of herbs because we want a really strong extraction. So we fill the jar up almost all the way. And then you just pour as much oil in as it can possibly handle. And you do have to, like, I have these chemistry sticks. So I'll like stick it in there and make sure I pop out all the bubbles and all of that to make sure I get as much oil as I possibly can to cover the herbs. And then for the cayenne pepper, we just got it to where it was all being extracted and there was a little residue because not all of it will extract and dissolve into the oil. So you can use too much. It not really. It just you'll strain it out essentially. So that's all you do is you combine the herbs that you pour the oil on to cover, and you can either put it in a dark place for weeks at a time. We use controlled low heat to open up the cell wall and break open the cell wall to speed up the time a little bit. We use a water bath method. Um, because we couldn't sustain ourselves as a company like we are if we took 6 to 8 weeks to make everything. So but this is a safe and effective way without killing any of the constituents or the nutrients in the plants, when you're able to control the low heat. And, like, rice cookers and yogurt functions on, like, Instant Pots and stuff, too high. Like, it's gotta be a low, steady heat. You really need to be able to control it degree by degree to be safe. But that's how you make it. I mean, that's an extraction. Same thing with tinctures. Tinctures are technically an alcohol-based extraction. We don't do tinctures. We don't use any alcohol at all. We're an alcohol-free company. Um, but the way you would make a tincture is the same way. You use the plant material, and you can use fresh or you can use dry. The fresh does have to be properly prepared. Um, and you can get into some kind of some preservation things because fresh herb has water in it still. So that's why people prefer alcohol for fresh. Anyways, we make glycerites with fresh too, not a lot, but some of them. Um, but you just combine the two. So you fill the jar up with herb, you call it a menstruum. So whether you're choosing alcohol, you're choosing glycerin, you're choosing vinegar, those are just your solvents or your menstruums that the plant material is going to extract into. Those are going to pull out the plant material or the nutrients in the plant.
okay, okay. Sorry, I interrupted the story there, but I was curious about that. So that's what you then pu put on her comfrey in the
I
oil.
Yep, we extracted comfrey leaf. There's root and there's different parts of comfrey that can be used, but we use the leaf, and then cayenne pepper into castor oil. And we did a castor oil pack. Castor oil packs are where you take a larger amount of castor oil and you use a longer amount of time to get it all in the body. Castor oil is really thick, and so it's very viscose. So it takes a larger amount of time to absorb into the body, like 20 minutes to half an hour, depending on how much it is. So you can't just take it and rub it in. It'll feel greasy until it absorbs. So our topicals, we actually cut the castor oil with jojoba because we got it to a ratio that you can rub it in even though it's castor oil, because the jojoba provides the thinness that it needs to absorb nicer and quicker. But for this oil we used for our daughter, it was just castor oil. And we did castor oil packs, so I refreshed them every day, twice a day. In the morning, we would open it up, put more castor oil on it, close her back up, wrap her back up, and then we would do that in the evening too. And we started to make progress. We really did. We saw her bone filling in and it looked good. But what we failed to do was monitor the bottom of her foot. And we had something happen and we got distracted. And the next thing I knew, Will's gasping in the living room because Elena took off her sock and her foot was just necrotized. I mean, you could just see it was like this huge, like if this is her foot, this whole area here was just puffy and black and blue. And one thing I'd learned about hydrotherapy is that if you alternate hot and cold, it will draw things out as long as it's a closed wound. And so we wanted all that necrotized tissue to come out. And so I started alternating hot and cold. And immediately when I put her foot in the hot water, her foot popped open a little hole in the top and all of that necrotized tissue just started pouring out. It stunk so bad. It was black. It was bad, but it was coming out. The body was getting it out. And so after that was all said and done, all that bruising was taken care of, like on this side. And she had this little hole up here, but down here was a nasty, open, gaping, oozing wound. I mean, you could see down to probably that was her bone we were seeing. I don't know. But it was pretty bad. And I knew just from what we had dealt with for the other, they were gonna either wound vac her or suggest we amputate her foot because they don't know how to deal with that kind of stuff. They don't know how to heal that kind of stuff. And they don't trust the body, they trust their pharmaceuticals. So I reached out to somebody who I thought could help me think straight. And she told me to mix up a wound powder and to put the wound powder on the wound one day and then bandage it up and then alternate between manuka honey and that wound powder. And the wound powder was chaparral and another herb. And I think it was frankincense. I think we crushed up frankincense resin, if I remember right. It might have been frankincense. It was either frankincense or myrrh and chaparral powder. And we just mix it up in a powder and then we put it on the bottom of her foot. And we put the 3C's oil, the castor, cayenne, and comfrey on the top of her foot where the gaping wound was not. And we kept her wrapped up. And we were doing that for, I don't know, 6 weeks or so. No, not 6 weeks. Sorry, like 2 weeks or so. And I wanted to know things were changing inside. I thought I could feel things changing, but I wanted to see. And so her doctor actually ordered us x-ray 2 weeks into her healing against his recommendation. It was my desire for an x-ray. He said bone doesn't do anything for 6 weeks, but he'd give me the x-ray. But I just wanted the x-ray for my own knowledge. So we can see the bone filling in only 17 days. And it was already filling in prior to that. It's just that's when we could get the x-ray. So it doesn't take that long for bone to heal. Maybe if you do nothing, but we were doing something and her foot completely healed at home. We never took her to the hospital. We never consulted a doctor. We consulted people through screenshots and stuff, but we were able to help her heal at home completely from that. And I promise you, if we had taken her in, it would have been probably straight to the wound team, straight to a wound vac, straight to considering amputation. It was that bad.
My goodness. Wow. That powder you made is powerful, I guess. And
Herbs are powerful. Yeah. So, like for our company, I'm countercultural, if you will. People are getting to know me as like everybody else knows me to be, kind of rebellious, and I go against the grain. And when it came to alcohol, I had used tinctures before, but I never really felt okay about it. And then when I tried to make my own and I'd have to go to like the liquor store and get the highest proof alcohol, it was just really unsettling in my spirit. I don't know. It just felt like, why do I have to do this to make medicine? It just didn't settle well. So then for our company, I just decided right off the bat, I'm going to go with my gut and we're not going to use alcohol. And so I used glycerin. We use organic coconut glycerin and combine it with purified water. We have a home purification system and whole house one. And so we use our home purified water and then we use the organic coconut glycerin for our menstruum. And I actually had master herbalists tell me, you're not a herbalist. Like glycerites are weak and you don't know what you're doing if you're not using alcohol. And for a while, I kind of I was doing what I was doing because I had inner confidence, but I didn't really have a bold confidence about it because all these people were telling me I wasn't legit, because I wasn't practicing according to master herbalism guidelines. And so I was reading in one of my herbal books that I'd had for a long time. Like I had, you know, looked through many times over. And I know this was because again, I don't believe in coincidence. Um, but there was a line in it that said, Edward Shook prized glycerin. And I was like, who is this? I need to know this person. And so I got online. I'm like, who's Edward Shook? And I was able to find a book that supposedly he wrote. Very expensive, very old. But I bought it and he has got so many pages, like 4 or 5 pages of his book dedicated to glycerin and how glycerin is the superior menstruum to alcohol. And here is why. He was a chemist and he can go through all the chemistry. He says the only reason you really need the alcohol strength is for resins and only to get certain constituents. Like it's like 0.1% of need in all of the plant world to use alcohol. The resinous and oily stuff, that's it. And if you don't need the resinous and oily constituents and you can pull those constituents out another way, you still don't need it. Like it's so not necessary. And so that gave me a boldness. And I was like, okay, I got some education now. I got some knowledge. But do you know how far back I had to go? Way over 100 years. Dr. Shook practiced in the early 1900s. And so I think what has happened is, and I know this is what happened, the pharmaceutical industry has tainted herbalism. So right around the 1930s, 1940s is when pharma came into not just America, but also the European nation. The Europeans fought back a lot harder than we did in America. And so while the pharmaceutical industry still was able to do a lot in Europe, they really got way more of a playground in America. And so
mm,
they started to influence herbalism with alcohol being a standardization method, and with it being a strong preservative, and with it being, you know, used in pharmaceutical grade medicines. It was almost like a blend to make herbs act more like drugs and be more forceful in the system and like that kind of thing. Because what happens with alcohol, and herbalists will tell you, if you want something to go to the kidneys, extract it in water. Because when you take water into the body, the kidneys filter anything water based. But if you want it to go to the liver, extract it into alcohol. Well, Why is that? Because is alcohol a fat soluble thing? Because the liver, processes all the fat soluble vitamins. No, it's because the alcohol goes straight to the liver because the liver is in charge of getting it out of your body. So as soon as liver or alcohol hits your system, your liver is got its attention on that alcohol to get it out of you. Like the body does not want you to have alcohol in your system. Now, technically speaking, glycerin is a sugar alcohol, but chemically speaking, it's different. It's just different. Its chemical makeup is different than distilled ethanol or, any of these distilled liquors. Um, so that's why they say that, because the way the physiology is, it wants that alcohol out. So those herbs in that alcohol are going to go straight to the liver, but not because the body's going to pay attention to the herbs, because it wants the alcohol out of the body. So that's the whole story behind alcohol. And I mean, the Bible does talk about it. People who are on their deathbed for comfort and for things like that. I'm not saying it doesn't have potentially a place, but I think we drastically overuse it. And I think the only reason that it's used in herbalism is because of the influence of the pharmaceutical industry. So a lot of herbalists today, um, they can be old, they can be in their 70s, 80s, they can be the old ones. They still only went back to the 1940s. They still only went that far back. They didn't go back far enough. So they're still heavily influenced by the pharmaceutical industry.
Okay, so you decided not to use alcohol in your herbalism and to use glycerin. What else did you learn about herbs and treatment?
So, um, it's not enough to know what an herb does. You have to know how to properly use it too. And I think the pharmaceutical world has influenced the pill popping way of taking herbs. So encapsulating everything, making herbs into powders and putting them into, you know, capsules. Um, when you do that, you limit the effectiveness of the herb because really wherever that capsule opens up, that herb is going to hit that area like full on because it's going to be a large amount released right there at that spot. Right. So in Dr. Shook's book, what I understand about him, and I've told a lot of people about him, and I had an interesting thing happen. I'm just going to tell you this. I don't know if you keep it or not, but he was alive in the very early 1900s, and if you read his book, he speaks boldly and vehemently against what was going on during his time against herbalism. So, what I understand about him, there's not a lot out there about him, and I think that may be on purpose. Um, but he was a pharmacist in LA, and some older person, they're probably in their 70s or 80s now, knew him. I don't know if they attended his classes or whatever, because what he did was as a pharmacist and as a chemist, he taught physicians his formulas and how to make herbal remedies to prescribe to their patients. That was his job. And so I have a pharmaceutical strength, if we want to call it that, physician grade book of formulas. And the name of the place in LA is written on one of the pages in the book, like because the guy that printed it did a forward, and it still exists in LA. And so I called them for another personal situation that I'm dealing with that's pretty serious. And I was considering using a couple of his formulas, but I wanted to know if anybody else had used them successfully. And so I called this place in LA to ask them if there was anybody I could talk to that was familiar with Dr. Shook that could tell me if anybody had used these particular formulas. And the person on the phone ended up like interrogating me. Who was I? Where was I from? Why was I calling? Who was I calling about again? What did I want to know? And I knew she knew what I was talking about because she told me they have one of his formulas, only one of them that they sell in the store. And then it's all the old guys that just come in and get herbs for his formulas from time to time. But then she reverted back to, and who are you? And why are you calling? And what do you want? And all this, like, she didn't think I had good intentions. And I ended up sending her my certificate, my naturopathy certificate with my name on it. I sent her the link to our company. I sent her the picture of his book. I sent her a screenshot of the formula that I was thinking about, and she ghosted me completely. Like, wouldn't even talk to me. And they used to put it out as a free PDF that's not available online anymore. So I think the way that I've freely talked about it, people are interested enough that they're going and finding these things and they're getting nervous. So that tells me something happened that they know about before that, because otherwise, why are they so nervous to, protect this information? I don't understand. Um, but I have both of his books. He's got an elementary one that would be more suitable for like the home use. Um, some of his herbs are really difficult to find. Some of them I can't find. I'm gonna have to grow by seed if I want them organic. But for the most part, I revert to his formulas, and he talks about having something for everything. I mean, cancer, diabetes, high blood pressure, um, what are the other things we deal with? Kidney stuff. We have a calculus deposit blend that people have used to dissolve kidney stones, like stones that the doctor said were too small or too large to pass. They were able to dissolve them. And I know people use other like Chanca Piedra and I've used lemon juice in the past successfully. It's not good, but I've used it. But hydrangea dissolves calculi in the body, all throughout the body. So the way that calcium builds up is injury, right? So, like if you injure your Achilles tendon, it's going to get calcified if you don't use it. And that's because your injury has made a weakness in the body. So the body comes in with the calcium to provide the strength for that area until it's strong enough to be able to use it again. So you can get calcifications anywhere. You can get calcifications in your abdomen. You can get calcifications in your intestines. You can get calcifications in your kidneys, your liver. I mean, anywhere really, anywhere there's an injury, the body can develop a calcification. That's what leads to osteoarthritis, right? Damage in the joints, and all of a sudden they become calcified. So it's to keep them from continuing to move because that's a weak spot, but you got to keep it strong so the body can keep going. So it calcifies it. So my father-in-law, he there was one time we went to Florida and he was in his early 60s. I mean, and this was an active man. I mean, he worked himself really hard. He's a very, very hard worker. But it was really sad to me because we were trying to do a river walk in Florida and it was a nice day. And every 5 minutes we had to keep taking a break because his knees hurt so bad. And then he couldn't sleep because his shoulder hurt so bad. And then he couldn't get off the couch because he tried to push himself up with his wrists and his wrists hurt so bad. And so I was like, Dad, will you try this if I send it to you? And I mean, he's probably bought a dozen bottles of that stuff from us by now. It got to the point where he was starting to be able to move his shoulder better and not have that pain from like the arthritic uh tension, but starting to get a different kind of pain because all of a sudden he was able to move it again. And it's like, okay, now you can get to the muscle. Now start moving and strengthening it so the body doesn't feel like it has to recalcify it to give it its strength back. And so that's what he's doing. And now his wife, I mean, they're going on 8-mile hikes in Florida and he's in his mid 60s now, you know? And I mean, there's the way that I look at herbalism is we're too adjusted to the pharmaceutical industry. And we don't believe in herbs if they don't work immediately. We want them to work immediately. And so that's why modern herbalism is full of the strongest, most, you know, body forcing strength it can be, but it's really forcing the body into unnatural things. Even though you're using natural herbs, you're forcing the body into unnatural processes by the way they're being used. And so you really have to have the intelligence to know the proper way to use an herb and what it's for, not just what it's for. It's not enough to know lemon balm's a nervine. Well, how do you process lemon balm? You know, how do you best use it? what, you got to be careful. And like, I look at feeds. I'm in like a group on Facebook, like it's like an oils, tinctures, herbalist group or whatever. And somebody will ask, what's good for this? And I'll look at all the answers and I'm just looking for somebody to say the answer. And nobody does. They're all saying like red light therapy or um, take vitamin D or, just doesn't even have anything to do with herbs. Nobody knows Solomon seal. It's for the spine and joints. Nobody's saying that. Nobody's saying the things that actually would help that are in the herbal world. Because they don't know. Everybody's learning from social media. I think, and these newer publications, these newer books. And the newer books are all influenced by the pharmaceutical industry. Let me show you this book. So I had FedEx put a I'm in this book all the time. It's like my second Bible. Like I really see the history of herbalism like the history of religion in some aspects. Um, but this is the book, Advanced Treatise in Herbology, and this is like a physician grade course in herbalism, and then this is his one for the home study. It's like $8.95. I paid hundreds of dollars for these. But look at this. This was Dr. Shook. I think I started to say this in the thing, but he calls vitamins a fraud. He says there are no such things as vitamins A, B, C, D, or any other letter in the alphabet. They simply do not exist, except in the fanciful imagination of unscientific minds who first originated the idea, or those who believe it because it is so extremely advertised. The very word is a clumsy misnomer. Vita is from the Latin meaning to live. The word min is only an abbreviation of the Latin word minimus, a minimum. A drop of liquid, the smallest liquid measure, the 60th part of a fluid dacum. Therefore, literally, a vitamin is the tiniest drop of liquid life. Strange are the beliefs of man and the gullibility of the multitudes. No one has ever defined the word vitamin nor shown its chemical composition because life is not a ponderable substance, either solid, liquid, or gaseous, but an inscrutable essence which defies the greatest wisdom to define. You may think this as being unimportant and a waste of time, but it is of the greatest importance because soon this foolish bubble will burst, and its propounders will be held up to ridicule. It is to be supposed that the word vitamin was intended to convey the idea that certain substances are cell foods that support and vitalize the organs and cells of the human body. But today we are not altogether in the dark as to what those substances are. In fact, we have quite an extensive knowledge of them and their chemical constitution. Therefore, let us discard all senseless terminology, meaning vitamins, and find out what these vitalizing substances are, where we can find them, and how we can use them to promote more life and vigor in the temple we call our body.
Sounds like he's a believer as well.
I mean, he talks about, I don't know if he was, I don't know how devout, but he talks about the Bible. And he talks, I mean, there's all kinds of mentions of scripture in here. What he was really a strong proponent of and believer in is truth and real health and the real capabilities of the human body. And giving ode to how creation was created to help and heal the human body. I mean, God talks about herbs in his word. Herbs were made for the service of man. Herbs were made for our food. Herbs will help us. And doesn't say the vitamins. When I read that, I was like, man, and the only reason they're named A, B, C, and D is because the first vitamin they found was A, the second was B, the third was C, the fourth was D. Like, there's no other science behind that. It's just,
Wow.
and look at what we've got now. Everybody's seeking the vitamins. Everybody's thinking I got to take a multivitamin and I got to, you know, take my vitamins. It's all about vitamins. When really you can't, the body will not absorb something out of a tablet that hasn't gone through the plant process. So you can't take rocks out of the earth, powder them, and call it a magnesium supplement because all that's happening when you take that powdery white substance is you're taking it in your body and then it's drawing water to wherever it is. So as it's going through your body, not absorbing anywhere, not getting into your cell, not actually getting into your body, it's attracting water to itself. So why does it help with constipation? Well, when it gets to the colon, it draws water to the colon to get the stool out. It's not hard, and they're pairing magnesium with amino acids. So it'll be at least a little effective because your body will try and use the amino acid. That's why you got magnesium glycinate and magnesium taurine and glycine and all these, you know, amino acid paired magnesiums now. It's to make the magnesium somewhat beneficial because all it's doing is going in and out of your body.
What's the alternative? How would you do magnesium in a different way, I suppose? Or yeah.
So diet and herbs. So dark leafy greens are going to be your highest in magnesium. So kale, really full of magnesium. We use nettle. Stinging nettle is often known as nature's multivitamin. Its roots go really dark, or not dark, but down deep into the soil. And so it pulls up a lot of what's down deep in the soil. So very nutritionally dense. So we use nettle. Some people will use nettle in cooking because once you blanch it, it takes away the sting. And so people make nettle lasagna and they'll use it in place of, like a kale or other collard or something in a green. We don't use spinach. Spinach was man-made. So spinach is really, really superficially high in oxalates, really hard on the kidneys. It's not I didn't make spinach. It's a man-made cultivation. Um, and actually so is broccoli and cauliflower and some other foods. They were all created by man. They're all actually part of the cruciferous vegetable family, which used to just be dark leafy greens. And then through some way they were able to cultivate it, they were able to make what we now know as broccoli and cauliflower. But like
What?
mustard, yeah, mustard greens, kale, I want to say collards maybe in that too, but kale for sure. If you went back 100 years, probably 90% of what you buy at the grocery store didn't even exist. Industrial revolution made a lot of the food we know today through hybridization and cultivation. I mean, look at the no seed movement. There's not even seeds in our food anymore because they don't want us to be able to rely on God for our food. They want us to rely on them, you know? So that's what we use. So you can use food. I'm not saying you have to have an herbal supplement, but you have to have a food full of vegetables if you're going to use it for your nutrition. Otherwise, if you're somebody who is hustling and bustling and on the go all the time, and definitely if you're relying on fast food nation, you're going to have to use a plant-based herbal supplement to get you that nutrition. So let me show you. This may stir up feelings in the Torah world because it is made from moss, and there's believers who don't think mushrooms are clean and moss isn't clean, algae, things that reproduce from spores. This actually reproduces from like a male female part before the spores are released, but there are spores involved. We think spores are just part of their seed. Like we think they're just the seeds of the. So this is another thing that we use. It's our sea moss. And the reason why I got into this was because of Dr. Shook, because sea moss is a really big deal in certain parts of the world. Dr. Sebi was a doctor. He passed away, but I mean, he lived into like his 80s, 90s, and he really heavily promoted sea moss for its 92 minerals. Like it was just super mineral dense. While Dr. Shook promotes it for its elemental basis. he goes on to share how, 18 elements essentially built our human body in their proper form. Sea moss contains 15 of those 18 elements. Well, what contains the other three? Your dark leafy greens. It's manganese, lithium, and selenium are the only three things that are missing that our body needs. Lithium, manganese, and selenium are missing from sea moss, but are in like alfalfa and nettle. And I don't know about kale. I haven't looked into that because I only looked at it from the herbal world, but um, readily available in our world. Nettle grows everywhere. I mean, it's a weed people usually want to get away from because it stings when you encounter it. But herbs grow everywhere. I mean, we literally live in a medicine cabinet if you're paying attention. Um, Problem is pollution and environmental pollution tainting everything. Like I wouldn't go pick an herb off the side of the road just because it's there, with all the industrial fuels and things like that. People ask us, do we grow our herbs? And I would love to say we do because I would love to be able to have that kind of control. But we are blessed with suppliers who are doing things well and good and who can afford to do the third party testing so that we can give confidence to the people that buy from us and show, hey, we didn't grow it ourselves, but they did. And they tested it to show you that it's pure and to show us that it's pure. And so that's why we use it. We actually went to a, um, I mean, I don't get too bogged down by this because we're all cooked, if you really think about it. We're all trying to live in this world. I mean, yeah is our only hope. But there is a place in America in the Applegate Valley of Oregon. Will and I went there last year for herb camp, and it's one of our suppliers. They invited us to come out and share their land with us or with them. And so while we were there, they took us on a tour of their farm, but they also shared a story of how they got there. And they were a couple that were in California. They were both in the corporate world doing something. I think maybe she was a teacher. I don't remember exactly, or principal, I think. Exactly, but anyways, more in the world in that way. And then they decided they wanted to be organic farmers and they wanted to grow herbs. And so they went from California, looked someplace in California, looked at a couple places around the Pacific Northwest there, around California. And one of the properties they were brought to, they had these people that were like they were consulting with and that, were mentoring them and stuff along with them, and it was a USDA certified organic land. That's why they looked it up in the first place. But they got there and all they had to do was one of their land tests, and the consultant they were with was like, "This land is radioactive. Do not take your shoes off and do not walk farther than you have to." It was radioactive and USDA certified organic. So that's the world we live in. You don't know. So what they went on to tell us was Um, they plant from seed on their farm. So the land they ended up finding was an old Indian reservation. And so that land had never been tainted because the Indians used it to grow herbs before it wasn't used anymore. So they just had to unearth it and revive it. And that's what they've done. Well, I don't remember how long they've been out there. I think it's been a decade or more. At some point in that time, Monsanto got wind of them and sued them. They won. The farm won. But while they were in the litigation process, Monsanto went to all the other counties in Oregon and made sure that no other county was allowed to place or plant a non-GMO seed in the ground. So now, because they won, the Applegate Valley is the only county in the state of Oregon that can plant a non-GMO seed. It's illegal
That
everywhere else.
that's crazy. Evil Monsanto.
But the government's allowing it.
Yeah, that's wrong.
And the government's labeling things USD organic, that's radioactive. I mean, yeah, it's money. Money is the root of all evil.
Well,
And when you're on
goodness.
the
Okay.
supplier side, I mean, you start to see they lie on labels. There's nobody keeping anybody telling the truth. I mean, we gotta. So this is a supplement. If we wanted to sell this in a store, like Whole Foods or something, this is an FDA ready label, essentially. But the FDA didn't come to my house. They didn't test this. I made this label. The company that makes our labels did. But all I had to do was add the FDA statement. These statements have not been evaluated. I had to clean up the statements I made. I had to list them according to the supplement language. And then I had to list where it was from. It has to say distributed by. It says distributed by Maker's Mark Herbals.
So you're
That's
saying basically these people, I mean, manufacturers can put whatever they want on the label
as long as
because
they
they're
have as
third
long as
party.
they have what the government requires, they can put whatever they want on the label. And CMOS in particular, before I got into it, I wanted to make sure I could tolerate it because CMOS sounds disgusting to me. And you see a lot of people take it and they gag through it. And I was like, if I can't take it, I can't sell this. Like I can't do it. I have to be able to take it myself. And so we went into Sprouts, and there's a brand now called True CMOS. You would think if True is in the name that they're honest. You would think, right? You would think. So I pick up this bottle of CMOS and I'm just looking at it. And when you create labels and you're in the manufacturing world, you start to be able to read between the lines, right? And so I'm just looking at their label and they got a lot of trendy stuff listed on the label. I'm like, okay. They don't list what the botanical name is of the sea moss on their normal 16-ounce jars. Well, they have a beverage they also sell, which is more like a diluted, because you can dilute this in water and it's not as jelly. Well, on that label, it says Chantus crispus. And I know that company is not using two different forms of sea moss to make their products. There's just no way. The company that size, they streamline things. There's just no way they're using Chantus crispus for their beverage and not Chantus crispus for their jar. That just doesn't even make sense. And so I lost confidence in buying it right then. And I went to their FAQs on their website. Well, their website says they get their sea moss from Japan. And I'm thinking, Chantus crispus doesn't grow in Japan. And so then I emailed them and I said, hey, do you have a certificate of analysis available that shows the botanical name of the sea moss you use? They were so happy and eager to give it to me. And do you know it's not Chantus crispus at all? But yet they can put it on the label. The reason why the reason why every sea moss maker wants to is because that's what the research is on. But the true Irish sea moss is expensive. And I asked the supplier that we get ours from, because we get ours from a 5th generation supplier that is in Ireland, and they harvest it off the Atlantic coast in Ireland, the cold Atlantic waters. And I said, how do you know people are using legit sea moss? Like, I'm finding so much discrepancy. He said the first line of knowledge is the price. I was like, yeah, but you got to know more than that, because all kinds of companies hike up everything. And he said, well, that's your first line. Then ask them for the certificate of analysis, just like you did. So, yeah, I mean, that's what all the research is on. So everybody wants
So,
that. Nobody wants to do the real deal.
and this is important because in order to get the minerals your body needs, the two things you do are the Irish sea moss and then some kind of good dark leafy green and or nettle.
Yeah. That's
What
literally,
about, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, that's literally, if you want something that is foundational, that's it right there. And I'm not saying you have to do CMOS, but it's an easy, convenient thing to do when it's so full of nutrition. It's, if as long as you don't have a conviction that it's unclean, to me, it's a no brainer, if you can get good, clean. And this is I'm not a salesperson. I'm not at all. I'm passionate, and my passion sells our products. But I'm passionate because I believe in it. I can't be passionate about anything I don't believe in. So, yeah, foundationally, you need to have, a foundational plan of nutrients and how to get them. So, like my daughter that's pregnant, this and nettle syrup is her prenatal vitamin because what else does she need to grow a healthy baby? This is the building blocks that built her body. This is the building block that's going to build his body. You know, she takes this. Her midwife gave her Nora tea. Nora stands for nettle, oat straw, red raspberry, and alfalfa. Very mineral rich, pregnancy supporting herbs. Um, it's a popular tea amongst the midwifery world. And so she'll make her Nora tea. She puts in her tablespoon of sea moss and her teaspoon of nettle syrup, and that's her prenatal vitamin.
It sounds like that's a vitamin everyone should be I mean, not a vitamin. It sounds like that's a concoction everyone should be taking. So let's say that's a basis. Let's talk more about all this. What herbs would you keep in your cabinet if you were just the every person uh, that maybe they don't know that they should have on hand or no one talks about or I don't know.
Almond seal is huge for the musculoskeletal body. So if you have pain from joints or anything with the musculoskeletal, Solomon seal is huge um, because it works on all the joints. It whatever its plant um, intelligence is, it's just very powerful ally to the joints. So I mean, we're jointed all over: fingers, wrists, knees, shoulders, neck, spine,
So
ankles, everywhere.
might this be good for arthritis or something like that?
It is. We make a joint ailment recovery oil, and it's a topical, but people use that, and my father-in-law calls it a miracle oil. It is. I have people that rub it on their hips, and they just use it topically. I had a situation where I slept wrong, and I woke up and it just my neck hurt really bad, and I thought, well, I tell everybody else to use this, I better use it too. I just usually have joint issues, and it did. It is a pain reliever, but it's not just relieving the pain. The relief of pain is showing that it's working on other things. You know what I mean? So it's not a drug in that sense. It's not just
Mm.
masking what's going on. Pain is a signal. Pain is communication. You know, there's good pain and there's pain that's to get your attention because something is bad. Like we shouldn't suppress pain because pain is communicating something. So you got to let the pain be until you can figure out what the problem is. And then when you figure out the problem is, then maybe get a little comfortable, address the pain, but you know what the problem is so you can also address that too. We're too quick to want to suppress pain. The hospitals are too quick to give pain medication to kids even. They just want to dope you up and make you quiet. Like everybody. And who doesn't want to be relieved of pain? So you start to fear pain. And then immediately when you feel pain, you just want the pain to go away. Nobody is resilient anymore. And nobody perseveres to figure out, well, why am I having the pain in the first place? You know, it's not a normal thing. I was talking with my daughters about this today. I have 6 daughters. 5 of them are ages 16 to 25. So you hear a lot of talk about how our society has disrupted hormones and how hormones are making it so little girls 8 years old start their period. Like this world is just full of what they call xenoestrogens, man made estrogens and hormones. You find them in polyester and plastics. Um, I mean, the microplastics are getting in our water, they're getting in our air. They're just everywhere. They're also in skincare. They're also in body care. They're also in like things that people are using for their self-care. They're in makeup. They're in, I mean, inundated. This whole
Mm.
world, male and female, is inundated. Fragrances, they have a hormonal effect. Axe, men love to smell like Axe or any of these other colognes they get. It's all messing with their hormones. All of it. All of the chemicals for all the women's fragrances, all messing with their hormones. All your downy fragrance pellets people are putting in their washer or their dryer, hormone disruptors. We have none of that. I have none of that in my home. I don't do I mean, I did. Probably started 15, 20 years ago getting rid of that stuff. I changed from deodorant or antiperspirant to deodorant when I was 21. I've not used antiperspirant since. I menstrual pads. I know we don't want to talk about that, but menstrual care stuff. I mean, I was a young 20-year-old girl and reading how the chemicals they put in menstrual pads disrupt the hormones and mess up the chemistry of like that pelvic area of a woman and make them bleed more. And that tampons contained fiberglass. So when a woman would insert the tampon, it was cutting her, making her bleed more.
What?
All these things you don't think about. This world just makes it normal. And my girls, I mean, they have painful menstrual cycles. And I'm like, you guys, this isn't normal. But you know what they also do? They do have care routines and they, like these lotions that they put on social media. And I'm their mom. They know, they hear it from me, but they're also autonomous. Like they have autonomy. They can choose for themselves. It's their money, but I give them an alternative, but that's not what they saw on TikTok. My stuff isn't purple and pink and called drunk elephant. Like my stuff has a holistic meaning and it's pure and clean. It's not as fun, you know? But little girls, literally 8-year-old little girls, have 10-step skincare routines. Tell me
Oh,
why. And all that is doing, yes, it looks bad because she's 8 and why is she doing that? But the products she's putting on her skin, the products that she's introducing to her body, all your cells have estrogen receptors. And so if you're taking in this abundance of xenoestrogens, that's what's attaching to your cell. And xenoestrogens are very forceful, very forceful. And so they're like almost aggressive in attacking your cells to get in your body. While the plant estrogens, on the other hand, soy is one people love to hate, but red clover is another. There's others. Um, those estrogens act like phytoestrogens, natural estrogens, and go to your receptors and keep the xenoestrogens out. So it's a protective, prophylactic way to protect yourself from this environment of estrogens and hormonal disruption everywhere is by using plant estrogens. And people love to hate plant estrogens because they don't understand them. You have estrogen receptors. Estrogen is a natural chemical in your body. In these plants, if you take them the right way, and we do them in infusions or we make a syrup, we like them in liquid because, again, when you take something and you powder it into a capsule, you're really choosing to let that capsule determine where it benefits, as opposed to taking it as a liquid and letting it be more systemic and gentle on the body. So it's the beliefs that it's like somebody will say to you, my grandpa is really great for this. I will suggest something to him and he'll go to Google, but he'll go eat at Red Lobster and not question a thing they're doing at Red Lobster. He'll go eat at Arnie's and eat whatever crap they put on his plate at Arnie's and not question a thing they're doing. But he questions everything I do. And my grandma, bless her heart, my beloved grandma, most influential woman ever in my life. I tried to get her on nettle when she started having heart issues because they had to put her on a blood thinner. She had either a triple or quadruple bypass surgery, and then she developed AFib, which is an irregular heartbeat. Put a pacemaker in, and she had to be really careful to thin her blood. And I'm like, Grandma, nettle thins the blood. Now pharmaceutically, it doesn't force it into an unnatural state of thinness, but it helps thin the blood because it's mineral dense. And she's like, oh, no, I can't take that, Tara. It's got K2 in it. The doctor said you can't take anything with K2. So not only did she not want to take our nettle, but she wouldn't eat a salad because dark leafy greens are full of K2. She wouldn't eat dark vegetables because dark vegetables are full of K2. But she'd take the Coumadin and she'd take the warfarin, rat poisoning, because the doctor said that was a safe way to thin her blood. Well, do you know how she died? A hemorrhagic stroke. She had an aneurysm in her brain and her body couldn't clot because they had thinned her blood so much with the pharmaceuticals, her body couldn't form a clot. And so she literally bled to death from the top down because she I'm like, to me, it makes sense that if the goal is to thin your blood and they're giving you this medication to thin your blood, but the nettle thins your blood and it's natural and not going to cause you harm, what's the problem? Because I'm not a doctor. And that generation has made doctors God. And they're fearful, you know? It's really sad. It's that older generation is sad. I feel bad. It's not like I'm sad for them. I I just feel sad that they're enduring so much unnecessarily. Our 3 C's oil actually that I made for our daughter to heal her foot, we ended up bottling that and calling it 3 C's oil and making it a product we sell. And people across the country, even in Canada, have bought that oil who are dealing with pulmonary fibrosis. Pulmonary fibrosis is terminal. So I've had the older generation call me, one particular guy, call me and educate me about pulmonary fibrosis. So what happens is the fibrotic tissue develops scarring. And so you need it to not have scars because the scars make it so your lungs can't expand when you breathe. And so essentially the lungs fill up with all this scarring and you can't breathe anymore. That's a problem, right? And while that's happening, it's putting more pressure on your heart. So the issues with the lungs are causing issues on the heart. So they go through a whole bunch of stuff. While the trial medication that the pharmaceutical has to offer them is like $100,000. It's only a 30% efficacy rate. And that's the only hope they give them. So this lady is using this 3 C's oil in a castor oil pack on her chest, and she gets an x-ray showing that scar tissue is resolving from her using this oil on her chest. So she's in this pulmonary warriors group on Facebook, tells these people about it, and all of a sudden we're getting calls and orders all over the country for this oil. They started making their own. Somebody told me through the grapevine. She's got a lot of kids, and I mean, castor oil is time consuming and difficult to work with because it's so thick. Doing the dishes is probably the worst part. Cleaning all the material or equipment afterwards. And so that reflects in our pricing because it's time, right? So if somebody wants to make their own, I mean, more power to you. Less work I got to do, and it's helping you. I'm not like that, you know. Um, I don't have enough time to care for everybody. I have a lot of family responsibilities, but if I can help somebody be self-sufficient, yay, you know? I didn't ask for a company. The company was given to me and I'm just serving like I feel like Yah has called me to do. But if everybody was doing it for themselves, it would free up a lot of my time to do it more for myself too, you know? And in the meantime, I just feel like Yah has called me to help people in the meantime. So
This is so fun. It's so amazing. What? All right. You talked about skincare. Your daughters are using whatever the TikTok thing is. What do you have a skincare routine or thing you do?
I do. Um, First of all, I wear minimal makeup. And the makeup I do use is from a company called 100% Pure. They use fruit pigments and you can understand everything on their labels. But I still use very minimal makeup. I want my skin to breathe, you know? And I am not for like things I do for our company and things I do for myself. I don't use lotions because to use a lotion, you have to mix oil with water. And to mix oil with water, you have to use a chemical emulsifier. There are some ones that they say are more natural, but they're still lab made. They're still lab created because Yah made it so oil and water don't mix, right? And so anytime you try to make an unnatural thing happen, you have to use a man-made process to do that. So our bodies produce oil. Our sebum is oil. And when oil and water don't mix, what's the point of using a water-based lotion anyways if you're trying to get it into your skin that is oil-based? So I stick to oils. Anything I use as a moisturizer is oil-based. My cleanser is oil-based. I use the oil cleansing method. So the idea is what I just explained. Oil mixes with oil. Your sebum is oil based. Your dirt and stuff is settling into the sebum of your pores. So if you apply oil to your face, there's a process. You open up the pores with like a warm washcloth and you get the circulation going. And then you put the oil on and you massage it on like you would massage on a cleanser. And I extract herbs into it to make it more, like holistic. But I don't think you have to. Not everybody does. But if you have problems like acne or things like that, herbs can help with that too. And then that time is allowing the oils to mix, and then you take the washcloth really hot again, and you're pretty much steaming your face, and then pulling out the oil essentially and the dirt that's settled into the oil out of your face, and that's how you clean your face. And then using an oil-based moisturizer. Jojoba oil is actually not an oil, it's a wax. But in like it's got a really low freezing point, and so it's mostly liquid. And that's closest to our natural sebum. And so we use jojoba oil a lot. Um, there's beautiful oils. Castor oil we use medicinally more than anything. It's occlusive. And so on really thin skin, like I asked an esthetician who was at herb camp, very like me, like just aghast at what, the industry is doing in the beauty world. I'm like, "Well, what do you think of castor oil for the face?" And she's like, "No, it's occlusive. It's too occlusive." And I said, "Well, why are people getting results?" She said, "Because they had good skin in the first place." And it's like that's the power of marketing. You don't really know what somebody looked like before, and you can see if you're paying attention. Lighting is huge. Hair stuff and stuff for hair, skin, and nails is a big, big industry. And you'll see people say, "Oh, I grew like all this hair in like 2 months." And all they're doing is doing this in the right lighting. It's all a show. I mean, Zach Bauer says, don't believe anything you hear and believe only half of what you see. Like this, this world is making pictures talk. Like it's a wild world we live in, and that is the marketing, and the people just don't understand. And when you can quickly and impulsively just order right through your instant message, I mean, it's all these millennials. It's all these millennials who are also not able to have children at 20 years old, having to do all these fertility treatments because their body won't even act naturally for them to bear children. I mean, my children are married and I had honeymoon babies. They're struggling. They were born into this world. And as much as I've tried to educate them and help them, they still live in it too, you know? And they're not as strong-willed as I am. They didn't have the upbringing I did. I had to fight for everything. I had to protect myself in so many situations. I was the one protecting myself and keeping myself safe from a very young age. I had to figure out who to trust and who I couldn't trust. I believe Yah was with me, but I didn't have anybody really looking out for me other than the times I lived with my grandparents and the few angels along the way. My kids didn't grow up like that. They've always had me and their dad to protect them and keep them safe. So I think they feel a little bit more less like they need to worry about everything, you know? My oldest daughter said, "Mom, if I thought about everything you did, I wouldn't go anywhere or do anything and I'd probably starve to death." I'm like, "But I can function. I like to call myself consciously oblivious. I try to think about the things that are important. I try to think about the things I can control. And I trust Yah for the rest. Because I can't control everything. I can't control the water that the city is pumping into my faucet, but I can get a water filter. I can't control the air that's coming in through the windows, but I can get an air filter. We can't control the dirty technology around us, but we can get these. Dr. Monzo introduced me to these. He showed sorry, he showed the one he uses. I usually wear it on a necklace, but he introduced me to Aries Tech, and I became an ambassador for them because you can earn product if you it's like an affiliate type of program, and they're costly. So I wanted to outfit our whole house. I wanted every one of my kids to have one of these to wear. My babies wear them. around their neck. My children do that. Remember, my oldest daughter always has hers on. But this one is, we keep these in our car. I just had them out. If it ever came up, I could show you. These are for, like, the way that they're built is they're built to do a certain range. So, like, I have this one on my phone. I have one on my computer. The tablets we have them on them. Anything that's like a handheld device or a portable device has one of these on. And these will provide like Dr. Manzo explained, like kind of like a bubble, if you will, like a resonance bubble. So any frequencies that come in have to resonate with the frequencies this is putting out. So then it becomes harmonious to your body. So this will be like a 3 foot diameter. I believe it's a 1.5 foot radius, 3 foot diameter. So if I have it right here, then there's a 3 foot bubble around me, a resonance bubble, right? And so usually I have this in my pocket or on me somewhere, but I still wear this one because I wear it closest to my heart because I don't want, it's usually on a cord if I'm not wearing another necklace, but you know, it easily goes in and I don't even notice it's there, but it's this processor chip in here. It's got quartz and other things people are using for EMFs, but this was made for the military originally. It was originally made for the military, and now they're outfitting like stadiums and all these big public places with these things. But I use that one on my person. We use that one on our phone and devices. This one we keep in our cars because when you're traveling, I drive a 2012 Honda Odyssey. It still has Bluetooth in it, but all the cars around you also have Bluetooth. So, I mean, you're driving, everybody is electrified. So we keep one of these in our cars. And then this one we keep around our house. So the last I looked, it was a 250-foot radius. So these will cover 500 feet. So we just position one at the epicenter of where we think stuff is coming in every 500-foot bubble throughout our house. So we have a couple of these. Well, we have a few of these through our house. I've earned them being an affiliate. Um, they've also gone up in price because they changed hands um, since Dr. Monzo introduced them to me. This one we used to be able to get for $49.99, and if you got like, I don't know, 3 or more at a time, you could get them down to between $29.99 and $39.99. And so it was a requirement. If my kids wanted a smartphone when they were old enough to pay for one, they had to have this on. I don't care how dumb it looks. I don't care how dorky your friends think you are. If you don't have that on, you're not on my phone plan. Good luck. Like that was the way it was. And so they do, and now they do it on purpose because they understand. And one of my daughters, when you are protected this well, you feel it around you when you're not. So you don't feel it now, or I'm not saying you personally, but people who are like, EMFs don't bother me. It's because you're used to it. They are bothered. They are disrupting your cellular processes. They are affecting you, but you just don't realize it because you're so inundated with it everywhere around you. I mean, this may be overprotected to some. I saw Dr. Monzo only had that. I have it on my phone. I have it on my computer. Everything that we have that is giving off an electromagnetic frequency, this is on. So I'm almost like cautiously overprotective, maybe, but I don't know because I had one client ask me, like, will they expire as like 5G comes out and all that? And I asked them that, and they said that they are programmed to exceed far beyond 5G. I don't know what that means. I'm not an electrical engineer. Maybe Dr. Monzo can, explain that better. But uh, I know they work because I know what I feel like if I don't have protection, and I do not think it's psychological. I had to have an MRI of my pelvis, and to go in to do the MRI, you have to take off everything. You can't have your phone by you. So I had nothing. I was like naked, EMF protection wise. I'm very rarely ever that exposed. And I could feel it so intensely. Like, yes, it's a big magnet, and of course everybody feels it, but I mean, I could feel it. Like it was so intense. And I can hold a phone that doesn't have one of these on. and I can hold it maybe 2 minutes and I'll start feeling it right here in my hand, in my arm. The radiation going into my hand. I actually
Ah,
had to have a test done. And to do the test, I had to hold a tablet for the naturopathic office. And I was doing a telehealth consult with the naturopath who wasn't actually in the office, but I was doing it from their office. And I had my phone sitting next to me on the table, and I was holding the tablet like this, not even thinking about it. And then a little time passed by, and I could feel it in my arm. And I looked behind it, and I was like, "Well, sure enough, they don't have any protection on this." And I asked him when he came back in to take it, I was like, "Do you guys do anything with EMF protection around here?" He's like, "Nah, we don't do anything like that." I was like, "You're a wellness center. You should care about this." But no, they care about their IV drips of inorganic elements that are making them buco dollars. Like, even the naturopathic world, it's all nutraceuticals. I mean, the doctors are trained to, I say peddle, but prescribe pharmaceuticals. Naturopaths are trained to prescribe nutraceuticals. They're all still man made to a degree, unless you're truly in just doing herbs, herbal based medicine. Unless you're truly doing just herbal based medicine, it's man made. So it was created in a lab, or somebody changed something about it to be able to patent it. Like, anytime you take something, I had a friend recently text me. People love to send me products and be like, "What do you think of this?" I love it. They don't pay me to consult for them. They just use my time to tell them how awful the product they're looking at is all the time. So my friend sent me this thing and she's like, "What do you think about saffron?" I said, "Saffron's amazing. We use it in our brain balance focus blend." She goes, "Well, what do you think about Affron?" And I said, "What's Affron?" She's like, "Well, it's 30 milligrams of the actives in saffron that this company's making." I said, "Oh, you mean this company decided to take saffron, change it, and call that Affron so they could patent it and sell it to you because it's now standardized and you think you need the standardized because the regular saffron won't work?" That's what's happening. A lot of our products, actually, not a lot of them, some of them have been inspirations from some of the products I've consulted with people on. Like, I can see why they put this product together. I can see the main things that are the powerhouses. I pull out the herbs, forget about the patented stuff, and I use that and I make the product. And it's just the herbs, the powerful nutrients and constituents in the herbs that your body knows how to use. You know, your body's not going to use something just because you force it into it. It's going to get it out. And then you're making your body have to work harder to detox you, you know? So, cool story. So, Dr. Monzo also turned me on to bioresonance scanning. So what he does with his Q4 is bioresonance scanning at the heart of it. So when you're there, you use the electrodes. You know, you use your hand or you put your hand on the palm thing. Last time I was there, he had me hold electrodes. If you're doing it distance, you know, you can send hair or you can send urine or some sample of your body, some DNA sample, and then he'll test it um, electromagnetically, because at your core, you are an electromagnetic being. Well, we were seeing him, and I mean, I have a large family. So to go see him, yes, he was economical compared to other places, but when you add up $60 a person, I mean, for my side family, that's $420 for one frequency scan. And we did it. We did it as often as we could afford it. And then, you know, I also started learning about frequencies and how you're changing all the time. Your frequencies are changing all the time. And so I started to wonder, like, we go in, he tests us in that moment. How long does that treatment that he gives actually last? You know? And not that I was starting to second guess Dr. Monzo, but I did start wondering that about frequency medicine. And so when we moved to Texas, I met a woman. She lived in Austin, and I was consulting with her about something relating to diet. And she introduced me to this software called AOScan. And she was like, I was like, "Well, what is it?" And she explained it to me. And I was like, "Oh, yeah, I know about frequency medicine. So what do you need me to do?" And so she had me give her a 10-second voice recording and take a picture of myself against a white wall. And then I had to give her, like, my name, my weight, my height, just some, personal information, not like my social security number or anything, but just like personal details about me and my body. And she scanned me from Austin. I live up in DFW, so we're about 4 hours away. And she sent it back, and I about dropped my jaw reading it because on it, it's full of details. Like it's very comprehensive. But what stood out to me was it pulled out an acute distress of my right kneecap. What she didn't know, but that I knew, was the day before I had had my right kneecap adjusted at my chiropractor because the day before that, I was out skipping with my son and something happened to my knee. So I went to the chiropractor. They put it back into place while that was an acute distress. That picked up on my scan. And I was like, all right, sign me up. What do you need me to do? So we've had this, it's called AO Scan software, and it's personal. So you could have it. It's just a subscription service, like a lot of technology is going to. This man who created it used it for his son who had cerebral palsy. It comes out of Russia. And he's been using it at a standalone center in Utah for 3 decades. But I think when COVID happened, they saw an opportunity to get it into people's houses and personally. So when I first signed up with them, they had a military grade phone, like a Android phone that they had this software uploaded on, and that's what you use. But then over time they said, well, iPhones and Android phones now are more than capable of handling this software, so you don't even have to use that anymore. But you can use it on a computer, and it's literally I just pull it up. And what I used this for that was going to connect was when I had that MRI and I felt all of that electromagnetic radiation um, fully exposed. I thought to myself, I need to do a scan when I get out of here because this is surely going to affect me if I don't. Because I mean, it was intense. And so I went out in the car, and when I was still in the parking lot, I did a scan. So I'm going to put scan up here, and it's going to scan all these things. I'm just going to show you what it does. So then it starts doing this. And that means that it's scanning me. And what it's doing is sending out frequencies. So it's emitting frequencies right now to my body. And the reason it knows me is because it's got my bioenergetics in it from me talking to it and giving it my stuff. And then whatever it doesn't resonate with, it's all about resonance. It will send frequencies to try to bring it in a state of resonance, in a state of balance. And so it's optimizing you. Kind of like these work, it's optimizing the frequencies around you. This is optimizing your inner being. So it can work on the frequencies related to your emotions, all the chakras and meridians that Dr. Manzo talks about, the energy pathways in the body that he developed his Aleph Tav system through. This helps to open those up frequency, like from the frequency level. And so it'll show me, like if something doesn't resonate. So it'll give you the before scan to show you what was out of balance. And then it'll give you the after to show you after they released the frequencies, what resonated and came into balance. So you can use it as a tool to help see what you're actually dealing with in a physical basis by noticing patterns. So for instance, the foods, it will identify a list of foods. And all that's telling you is based on your composition today, this food may be harder for you to digest today. So in your current state. And so that's not a food allergy. That just means maybe you're a woman and your cycle is at a certain point that day. And, maybe this food isn't easy to digest because of how your cycle affects your digestion, or a man and you had a stressful day. So maybe your stomach's not up to par and, maybe it'll have a harder time digesting heavier foods. And so they pull out the heavier foods. It's just looking at your physiology for that moment. And these are the foods that are going to be hard based on your physiology in that moment. Well, if you scan yourself on a daily basis and you start to see, well, geez, every day it seems that I can't eat eggs. It's sticking. It's never resonating. Well, then you may want to look into maybe you have egg sensitivity, or maybe you have an egg allergy that is causing you some things you don't realize are connected to that. So it can help identify food allergy, or really, it could lead to a food allergy diagnosis, but it can help identify food sensitivities that are actually in the physical. And it can help identify physiological stuff that has become beyond the frequency into an actual physical state by noticing those patterns and the things that are keep coming up, but they're not resonating. So we use this. My kids love scanning. I don't know if they actually feel like, I'd like to believe that they're feeling a difference in their bodies, or if it's just the cool thing going on, or like when you work on the emotional one, it plays songs and it's tuned to like the 432 hertz, and it'll give a Tesla beat. Uh, but it'll actually help you identify. It's really, it's so comprehensive. You can imprint your own homeopathics, but you don't have to use a pellet. You can just do it in water. So you can imprint a homeopathic frequency into water and that take it just like that. I can do what Dr. Monzo does and put it into a vial into the laser, because we have his laser. So I can imprint into the vial and then use the laser to get that frequency into what I need it to. And you can do this from a distance just like he does, but you can do it for yourself. And it's $149 a month. But when you have a family like us who spent $420 a scan, like, it's not hard to see the benefit of that. So I mean, I literally do this for our whole family. My daughters that are married now and hoping to bear children are having me check their hormones periodically to see what's out of balance, so they know what to start supporting because they want to have children. And so it's a really hands-on, useful tool. The only thing I can say about it is I have met some conspiracy theorists in the Torah movement, and they think that the requirement of using your voice is nefarious. But I don't think that, because if they want to use our voice nefariously, we talk every day, everywhere.
Yeah, this podcast would be just ripe for the picking.
Just having a phone is, who knows who's listening. I mean, I'm not going to get, and I'm very critically minded. I'm very skeptical. That's how I think I've arrived to the things that I do, but I'm not going to just toss something this unreal off to the side because they use my voice, because what they're using are your vocal cords. So your vocal cords are sending a message, and they can take your vocal cords and see what is imbalanced through your vocal cords in your rest of your body. So it's just another informational piece that they can use readily to be able to scan, or test your current state of being. So I don't look at it like that way. And like, if I showed you, so it'll do color therapy. So my emotional state is related to these colors. And it's been more than a handful of times that I've done a scan on somebody, and one of these colors is what they would call their favorite color. And I'm like, that's because your body is wanting to balance itself. Your body always wants to be in a state of homeostasis. So the colors that you're drawn to could actually be your body trying to balance itself. I know for me, I don't like the color red. It excites emotion in me that feels uncomfortable. Well, red is often associated with my most suppressed emotion. And so it's
Mhm.
almost like it makes me uncomfortable because all of a sudden it's trying to come up, and I've subconsciously suppressed it. So even the colors that we prefer, like, marketers know this, that's why I mean, I even think like in your background, the blues with the yellows, I mean, they match on the color wheel. They make a nice aesthetic. Green is often a good vibe, earthy color. Like, there's a lot of science and psychology that goes in behind why all the kids stuff is bright and bold and attractive, and why color sells. I mean, color speaks to you. Color is a way that Yah designed our world to help our body be in a state of homeostasis. It's really incredible, all the tools and things in our world that we can just go through day by day and think day by day and just think, oh yeah, well, that's a nice color, or oh, I just don't like that color. And you just have no idea why. Well, it could be because of your emotions.
Maybe in this vein, have you gotten into looking into light and light color and blue light? And is this good for you? And is it bad? And what did you think about the red light? Someone said, oh, I red light therapy. Can you talk at all about what you found about those things?
I watched your interview. Was his name Tristan?
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yes.
I watched that and I contacted him. I'm really interested in their tablets, but they're really expensive. I mean, you can pick up an Apple iPad for 300 bucks and theirs are like 800, and I have 2 kids. They're not iPad kids, but they do like to do some of their schoolwork on apps and stuff. But it's important to me, and I know the value of paying extra for the things we need, and supply and demand. I mean, that's why they're expensive, because they're not as in high demand as Apple iPads. I mean, I understand it all. So I'm not faulting them for how expensive they are, but for me, it's a little cost prohibitive right now, but I'm very interested in it. So I contacted him because I wanted to know how to best use what I already have. And so, like, I wanted to know, does the night mode, is that okay to put on during the day, or is it taking too much blue light away? Should we have more blue light during the day? When can I put it on at night? Should I be reducing it more as the night goes on? Like, just to better fine tune my own practices with what I have, essentially. And like he said, the iPhone 11 is the one that was the last one to not flicker. And
Hmm.
so I was like, well, I have the iPhone 15. What can I do to help my iPhone? He's like, just don't be on it much, which we shouldn't be on our phones much anyways. I'm like, well, I'm on my phone all the time. I run a farmer's market. I found it, and I have a company, and I have to do all this social media stuff, and I do the scan. It's just, they've made everything on your calendar, your finances, everything is on a phone now these days. Um, but I do use it, like they said, on the dark mode, it's not actually taking away the light, it's just changing the pixels. So I thought, well, it's doing something then, you know? And then I use the night mode, and then I just turn it up a little brighter if I need it brighter, or I turn it down if I don't need it up as high. So I definitely do. Um, we live in a house that was built, it wasn't custom, and it's a newer house. And one of my struggles in that house is the lighting. Like, when you are so, and I don't want to say it's a bad thing that I'm so sensitive. I appreciate that I'm sensitive because it helps me identify what I should be concerned about. I don't think the sensitivity is a bad thing. I think it's a natural, innate thing that Yah gave us to be able to navigate our world, you know? But the way they make attics, if you don't build in the can lights, they give you like this much room to put one of the LED discs in. So we had to change out all the ones that the builder put in and get LEDs that you can adjust the lighting. And so we put it on not the brightest, but we put it on a little less than bright setting for during the day. And then as the sun starts to set, we can flick the light and it'll turn on night mode. So
And it goes like red or something or orange
it
or
goes very amber.
okay.
In the morning when I wake up, I go to the bathroom first thing and I don't want to turn the light on. I like to let my body wake up gently. So I have a red light. From Mito Red. Supposed to be low EMFs. They're at least they're supposed to be conscious about that in my bathroom. And I click that on. And then at night, as things are winding down, when my kids go in to brush their teeth or get their pajamas on or start doing that, I turn it on so that they're getting that red light before bed. So it's like the sun calming down. Um, I mean, they say like green light can help with pain. Um, but light is definitely very powerful. I use what they call a biomat. It's it's got like 18 pounds of amethyst in it, and um, you lay on it and it warms up. So it's using infrared heat to warm up the crystals in the body, and then the body warms up slowly, and then it starts to the the flow starts to happen. And I mean, it helps with sleep. It helps with cortisol reduction. It helps with pain and discomfort throughout the body. Just maybe you had a long day and you're just feeling taxed from the day and worn. I use it before bed just because it helps bring me back into a state of well-being before I go to sleep. And I'm able to sleep, and if I do have to get up to go to the bathroom, I can go right back to sleep. So I definitely believe and employ these things in my life. It's part of my company. So I'll do scanning for people. I offer the scanning services. I offer to make custom homeopathics. I have the pellets that I can, do the imprinting on the pellets. But really, I think for families getting the subscription, and it's set up like an MLM. I hate using that word because everybody jumps to it's terrible. But I sold Pampered Chef once, and it's really not the devil. It's just a brilliant marketing way. I mean, you've got all these Pampered Chef consultants being all your marketers. So every little home they're in, they're marketing for and passion has to drive sales. And so you get that face-to-face marketing and interaction. That's that's pretty brilliant. And from a health and wellness standpoint, why would they want you to just be able to pick this up not knowing anything about it? At least if you sign up under somebody who's already with it, they know something about it. So it made sense to me that they would design it that way. But I mean, you can sign up as a preferred customer and that lets you get the subscription. But you can also create a business like an MLM if you want by signing somebody up to get the subscription who also wants to tell other people and sign them up. So it can be one of two ways, but you do have to sign up under somebody. And so it can sound kind of sales pitchy, but when you're paying me 40 to $70 to scan you, and I know that's just a snapshot, and I'm going to have to do more scans if you really want to get to the bottom of anything that might be physical, it makes sense if you can just do it yourself and we talk about it, because $150 goes really fast when you're doing 40 to $70 a pop, you know? And then the benefit of being able to use it for the rest of the people in your family. So there are these tools out there, and a lot of times they're just so expensive. I mean, I remember looking into the Quest 4 because I thought, well, geez, if I'm paying him this much every time our family gets scanned, and I know the scan is just a snapshot, maybe I can get the practitioner certification to be able to get the Q4. It's like 10 grand. Like $149 was way more accessible to me. So that's why that was just like the perfect scenario for our family. But I practice what I preach. I mean,
Where, so where can people find you?
well, I'm out in the community. I mean, I'm a Torah observant woman in a Torah observant family, so we like to be nomads and travel to different, gatherings and stuff. But I'm on all the social platforms except for TikTok. We have Instagram for Maker's Mark Herbals. We have Facebook for Maker's Mark Herbals.
Would you like to add anything else to people watching? Is there anything people need to know or anything I forgot to ask?
I like to encourage people that you are stronger than you know. You are smarter than you believe. And this world is not as scary as they want you to believe. And if you can just find the ability to be in a state of peace for a moment, to think practically, it could change your life because you have to have mindfulness. What are you doing? What are you actually doing to know what is helping you and what's hurting you? The greatest power we have is our power to choose. And we have a lot of freedom in this country. There's a lot of things we can't control. There's a lot of things we can. I just like to tell people control your controllables. The next choice, just do better. I was the mom who wanted to do everything right away. And I had all these little kids and I wanted to fix every problem. And it overwhelmed me into a state of paralysis. And this is a journey I had to take for myself. I had to start just choosing the right next thing. Because if you try to do it all at once, You become stressed out, and that's counterproductive anyway. And then you end up not doing anything. And then you end up just going to Taco Bell because you're hungry, because you just stressed yourself out and you don't have the energy to cook because you're all overwhelmed and stressed. You know, these are things I told myself. Find peace, breathe a little bit through things, but think with logic and don't think with fear. You know, um, and if you don't have Yah, that's where I would tell everybody to start. Because I don't know where I would be if I didn't have him. I don't know where we would be if we didn't have the hope he gives us every single day. I mean, when we can't, you have a long week in this world. And I mean, I deal with people. We started a farmer's market where we live, and I'm dealing with vendors. That alone is like, oh, it's a lot of work. And people are people. I mean, I've learned how to love people in a new way. But it's a lot. And I get to Sabbath and I'm like, thank you, Father. Thank you that you make me do this day, and just come out of the world for a day and just meditate and dwell in his midst and in his word and wisdom. And it's a recharge. And so, yeah, definitely sharpen your relationship with Yah first and foremost, above all. And trust his Holy Spirit to lead and guide you. And be baptized if you've never been baptized, because I think that's powerful. Um, and then, yeah, trust Yah's creation over man. I mean, that's really what I do. I trust Yah. I trust this book by this man who is dead over 100 years more than any doctor, more than anybody, probably in the herbalism world, more than any herbalist I could talk to this day. I trust this book more. I trust what he says more because he's willing to be honest, and he's shared his intelligence freely, you know? So I think of the law. I think it's what Yah says. If you seek me, you will find me. If you seek me with all your heart, and all these things will be added unto you. Seek ye first the kingdom of Yah, and all these things will be added unto you. That's all I did.
Well, Tara, this has been a most powerful and entertaining and informative discussion. I really enjoyed it, and I thank you for taking the
Good.
time. I feel like we could talk for another 4 hours.
Well, you're inquisitive and I'm curious, so yeah, we're a natural cause for lots of conversation, I think.
It's been a blast. I guess thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you for allowing me the space to share. So may Yah be glorified through it all.